Welcome to my channel. Get ready for an incredible journey through captivating tales and unforgettable adventures. Subscribe now to join our community and never miss a story. Our story begins on the second day of the new year, January 2nd, 2020. The boiler in the main character's small apartment stopped functioning. A man with dark hair and a blue t-shirt examined the steam-covered pipes with a frown. He suspected that he had rented a house with a boiler that was already on the brink of breaking down. As he slapped his slippers on the floor, an elderly man shouted from the adjacent apartment, berating young people for their lack of knowledge on saving heating expenses. The elderly man waved his broom and suggested that they simply put on socks and seal the windows. The residents watched from their apartments as the man scolded them for overloading the boiler. The main character felt annoyed, thinking that the old man had previously hinted at the boiler's vulnerability. He worried that if he informed the old man about the broken boiler, he would be blamed, asked to pay for repairs, and potentially face a rent increase due to his alleged negligence. He contemplated burying the boiler in the yard, but recognized that it would lead to future problems. As the wind blew through the shabby apartment, revealing cobwebs in the corner, the main character concluded that his life had always been difficult and filled with pain. Thus, enduring an icy shower seemed more fitting than a hot one. Shivering from the cold, he hugged himself and sneezed, acknowledging the chilliness of the room. He attributed this awareness to the old man's words, prompting him to promptly purchase window film to cover the windows. Standing on the balcony entrance, trembling from the cold, the main character pondered the butterfly effect, where a small action could have far-reaching consequences. Little did he know that a simple broken boiler would completely alter his life. In the evening of January 2nd, 2020, at 9 o'clock, a guy wearing a black hoodie approached a store employee and inquired about the location of window film. The employee, smiling, directed him towards a specific aisle near a large pillar with the letter F. As he wandered through the store shelves, he marveled at the wide assortment of available items. A child holding a wrench asked his father to buy it for him, but the man in the blue shirt questioned the necessity of the tool and told the child to put it back. Undeterred, the child insisted that the wrench had a comfortable handle. The main character, known as Lee Wa-young, speculated that this name was bestowed upon him by a father he had never met. He contemplated the meaning of his name, with Wa signifying peace and Young representing achievement. However, he couldn't help but observe that his life was the complete opposite of peaceful accomplishment. Abandoned by his parents as a child, the shelter he resided in merely provided him with basic necessities and shelter, offering no real opportunities for success. Recalling a distressing memory, he witnessed two larger boys dressed in white bullying a young and frightened boy. In an act of defiance, Lee Wa-young punched one of the bullies in the face, expressing his determination to become stronger. He believed that money equated power and thus devoted himself to work, even during his high school years. Unfortunately, with limited academic success and a lack of income, he had no prospects beyond part-time jobs. Dressed in a courier's uniform, Lee Wa-young handed a package to a customer, who handed him money in return. As he accepted the payment, a sense of dissatisfaction clouded his eyes. Through his experiences, Lee Wa-young had learned that the value of his time was meager. He viewed the world as a cruel place, shaped by this understanding. Lee Wa-young stood in front of a rack, eyeing a machete with a smile. He picked it up, admiring its stylish appearance. A girl approached Lee and asked why he was smiling while holding a machete. The guy with the cart admitted he didn't know and decided to keep his distance from Lee Wa-young. Lee Wa-young's smile was reflected in the blade of the machete, triggering memories. He realized that all his hard work wasn't worth even 10,000 won and that orphans like him couldn't join the military. Consequently, he became a mercenary, participating in numerous wars around the world as a member of the First Squad. The First Squad was an international mercenary group composed of orphans and social outcasts who had nothing to lose. They were provided with a bed, clothes, and money for the rest of their lives. Lee Wa-young couldn't help but feel grateful. They teamed up to eliminate pirates at sea and behead terrorists on land. Sometimes, he even took part in international wars to earn his own reward. The salesgirl placed her hands on the machete and informed Lee Wa-young that it was worth 240,000. She asked him what he intended to use it for and suggested that it was more suitable for collection purposes rather than logging or camping. She offered to show him more practical machetes. Lee Wa-young replied that it was fine and that it suited him. He had been considering buying a new machete for a while now since his current one was very blunt. Just holding the machete in his hands made him feel its power. As Lee Hwa-young pointed towards the film behind the saleswoman, he requested 10 meters of it. The girl began to cut the film with a stationary knife, but the cut was rough and jagged. Annoyed by the blunt knife, Lee Hwa-young told her to step back. The saleswoman looked up in confusion. Lee Hwa-young raised the machete and swung it in front of him. To her surprise, the film was neatly cut. As he turned around, he heard a commotion and saw a crowd of people bustling around something. It seemed as though someone had been hurt. Someone even asked him to take a picture with them. Suddenly, a large shadow cast over the crowd, and Lee Hwa-young's eyes widened in surprise. A small goblin with a knife pounced on the fleeing people, wearing a vicious smile. The people ran in fear, but the goblin caught up to one of them, stabbing him and causing him to fall lifeless to the ground. The goblin then crouched down and started devouring the corpse with an evil grin. When the goblin turned its attention to Lee Hwa-young, he recoiled in shock. The goblin lunged at him with its knife, but Lee Hwa-young swiftly decapitated it with a swing of his machete. Bewildered, he wondered what was happening in the shopping center building. Blood stained the floor, bodies were scattered, and trash littered the area. A scream pierced the air, and Lee Hwa-young, breathing heavily and smeared with green blood, held his machete, frowning. The stench of blood overwhelmed him. When he heard a cry for help, he turned around and saw bodies lying on the floor, while a few maliciously smiling goblins stood nearby. The woman covers the little girl, and they tremble in fright. The woman is frightened and asks for help. The main character swings his machete, cutting one of the goblins in half. The woman asks what's going on and where the goblins are coming from. The little girl clings to her in fear. The main character looks at them blankly, then down at his machete in exasperation. He realizes that the blade is better for crushing than cutting and decides he needs a more suitable weapon. His eyes widen in surprise as he sees a huge crowd of goblins in front of him. Gritting his teeth, he thrusts his machete forward, realizing that the goblins won't retreat unless forced to. Meanwhile, other individuals in the area are fighting the goblins using improvised weapons. A man in a black t-shirt hits a goblin's head with an axe. Another man with blue hair and red glasses sits in a corner, holding his head and shaking, praying for help. A chainsaw blade appears in front of him, and he looks up to see Lee Hwa-young telling him it's not a dream and that panicking won't help. Lee Hwa-young urges him to get up if he wants to survive, emphasizing that prayers alone won't save him. The main character realizes that their priority should be increasing the number of goblins they can fend off. 4 individuals take up fighting stances. The man in the black t-shirt wields an axe, the man with blonde hair wields a nail gun, and the man with glasses and the main character wield chainsaws. The bespectacled man turns around and uses the chainsaw to cut open the head of a goblin approaching him. Lee Hwa-young praises him with a smile, and the man looks down, shocked and covered in green blood. The main character reflects that even those who are physically and emotionally weak can find the strength to survive through the instinct of self-preservation. A man in a gray shirt alerts them to look away as a black sphere surrounded by a bright vortex of blue energy shields his face. Lee Hwa-young explains that he believes the monsters are coming from there and that they need to destroy it. The man in the gray shirt asks how they should do it, and Lee Hwa-young admits he doesn't know. 2 goblins with malicious smiles emerge from the portal among the store shelves, where the bodies of humans and goblins lie on the floor. Lee Hwa-young and the man with glasses hide behind a display case. The main character observes that the situation is getting worse, with no decrease in the number of goblins emerging from the rift and the resistance weakening. He realizes that finding a way to permanently eliminate the goblins is unimaginable. Peering out from their hiding spot, the main character notes the inexplicability of the goblins' appearance, as even the most brilliant scientists would be puzzled by the spatial rift they emerge from. Several goblins feed on the corpse of a woman, prompting Lee Hwa-young to count down from 5 to 1. The man with glasses questions him, and the main character explains that there are 10 goblins in each wave, with exactly 10 minutes between each wave. Frowning, he states that there are 26 goblins currently, and in 10 minutes, there will be 10 more. The main challenge is that while Lee Hwa-young understands the situation, he doesn't know how to resolve it. Additionally, not all items in the store are suitable weapons. Heavy weapons like axes, crowbars, chainsaws, and sledgehammers consume too much energy and can only be used in close combat, making one vulnerable to the goblins. The main character laments that many people in the store are already dead, and even those fighting at full strength appear utterly exhausted. With determination, Lee Hua-young believed that having a firearm would make a significant difference. Suddenly, the command to fire was given. A flash emanated from the rocket launcher, and they witnessed an explosion behind them. Several armed soldiers entered the room, announcing that they belonged to the counterterrorism task force of the Metropolitan Defense Command. They assured everyone that they were now under their protection. The soldiers instructed them to tend to the wounded and move towards their position. A tank entered the room as the soldiers fired their automatic weapons. In a swift motion, a goblin was shot in the back before it could harm the man with the child. The shop assistant instinctively covered her head, and a shot hit the goblin behind her, causing it to fall. Lee Hua-young let out a breath as the lifeless goblin dropped to the floor, its green blood staining the ground. The man with glasses expressed gratitude to the main character, introducing himself as Kim Bo-eun with a slightly awkward smile. The main character responded indifferently, stating his fatigue and advising Kim Bo-eun to go wherever he needed to. He had grown weary of weak people, as his experience as a mercenary had taught him that they were the heaviest burden. Lee Hua-young didn't want to be burdened with dead weight, especially when the danger was not yet over. Kim Bo-eun, gripping the chainsaw tightly, felt fear creep over him. The main character realized that the arrival of armed soldiers diminished the need for someone like Kim Bo-eun. He approached the soldiers who were engaged in a firefight with the goblins, grinding his teeth in frustration. He noticed that the soldiers were struggling with labored breathing and unstable stances, concluding that they were not much better off than he was. As the goblins rushed forward, evading bullets, Lee Hua-young clenched his teeth and extended his hand to one of the soldiers, demanding the machine gun. He introduced himself as Lee Hua-young, a member of the first squad. The soldier was taken aback and asked for confirmation, but Lee Hua-young swiftly snatched the submachine gun from the soldier's grasp with an indifferent expression. Another soldier cursed and berated himself for allowing his weapon to be taken. The main character ignored the commotion and began firing the submachine gun, effectively eliminating the goblins. The soldiers looked at him in surprise, questioning if it was all just their imagination. One soldier mentioned the first squad, the most ruthless mercenary group in the world, and expressed disbelief. Lee Hua-young continued firing the submachine gun, his expression unchanged. His shots hit a goblin that was approaching a young boy and girl. A soldier standing behind the main character gestured for the woman with the child to follow him, providing assistance. As the shot struck the goblin in the chest, soldiers aided in the evacuation of people from bloodied shopping malls. Suddenly, a system message appeared, indicating a game restart. Lee Hua-young stared at the system message in astonishment, clutching his head and closing his eyes. He couldn't fathom the incredible series of events that had unfolded since he entered the shop, and the appearance of the window in front of his eyes only intensified his headache. The main character found himself perplexed, unsure of the nature of the game. The fact that the message read, "Reload," instead of "Load," further added to his confusion. He had never encountered such grotesque monsters or witnessed a spatial rift like the one before him. Turning away from the system message, Lee Hua-young decided that attempting to comprehend the situation would be futile. He realized that inexplicable events had unfolded since his arrival at the store. Startled by a loud noise, he swiftly turned around to witness a massive orc emerging from the rift, bellowing loudly. Soldiers fired their automatic weapons at the orc as people scrambled to flee from the store. Astonishingly, the bullets merely bounced off the orc's body as he shielded himself with his hand. Gritting his teeth, the main character fired at the orc, shouting that the bullets had no effect. Both he and the soldiers unleashed a barrage of gunfire at the approaching orc. Suddenly, someone leapt into action, swinging an axe. Kim Bo-eun sliced through the orc's legs with a single powerful swing, standing behind the fallen creature. She explained that the orc's weakness lay in its lower half and that destabilizing them made them easier to handle. Lee Hua-young looked at Kim Bo-eun in surprise, lowering his weapon. One of the soldiers inquired about the newcomer's identity. The protagonist was taken aback, realizing that this person, who had effortlessly dispatched the orc, was undoubtedly a weakling just half an hour ago. He had been cowering in a corner, trembling at the sight of a small goblin. Yet, the individual who had handled the orc with ease seemed to possess extensive knowledge. Kim Bo-eun swiftly decapitated the orc with a precise axe blow, displaying confidence and precision. With a calm expression, Kim Bo-eun stood over the lifeless orc. The main character and the soldiers stood before the slain creature. Several more orcs emerged from the rift, but Kim Bo-eun remained composed and turned around. Lee Hua-young opened his mouth in astonishment as a young boy, wielding a wrench, charged forward, swinging the tool. The main character recognized him as the same boy who had pleaded with his father to buy him a wrench just a couple of hours ago. Engaging orcs armed only with knowledge of their vulnerabilities seemed reckless, especially considering his small and fragile physique. However, the boy skillfully dispatched the orcs as if he possessed decades of experience. Kicking the orc's legs, the boy sent it toppling to the ground. Lee Hua-young turned around in surprise, noticing the saleswoman twirling a chain in the air like a lasso. He recalled how she had acted similarly when dealing with the goblins, exhibiting a cold and calm demeanor in her eyes. Swinging the chain, she caused the orc to fall forward, smashing its face into the ground. The man named Kim Boen, currently wielding an axe to vanquish an orc, was the same person who had fallen to his knees and prayed upon encountering a goblin. Similarly, the boy who had pleaded with his father like any ordinary child and the employee who had spoken to him with kindness and gentleness were now fighting the orcs fearlessly. The main character couldn't comprehend what was unfolding before him. A soldier commanded a ceasefire, prompting the people behind Lee Hua-young to cheer, believing their prayers had been answered and they were saved. He pondered the stark contrast between those who had undergone a dramatic transformation and were fighting the orcs and the others. He wondered about the reason behind this transformation. A blue system message suddenly appeared in front of Lee Hua-young's face, stating that there was no training available but offering him the opportunity to ask 3 questions about the game. He realized the importance of choosing his questions wisely. The mercenary squad stood armed, with Lee Hua-young holding a machete in his hand. Their eyes emitted a blue glow. Lee Hua-young possessed a nickname bestowed upon him when he joined the world's most ruthless mercenary group and fought in numerous wars. Fearless and unafraid, he earned this moniker from his squadmates due to his ability to remain calm and rational in any situation. These traits allowed him to survive chaotic battles amidst shells and debris. The blue system message stated that the right to ask questions was granted to all individuals chosen to become players. Lee Hua-young once again realized that attempting to comprehend the situation would be futile. Examining the system message, the main character remarked that it was no longer amusing. He firmly believed that the words before his eyes, along with everything else that had occurred, were real. Dead orcs and goblins lay scattered on the ground, dismembered. Lee Hua-young asked what was happening, making it his first question. A voice emanated from the system message, explaining that it was the end of the world and that a system had been created to test humanity. It combined features from video games that people enjoyed. The main character firmly demanded the nonsense to cease. The system message instructed him to choose his questions wisely and added that he didn't have to ask them immediately. Frowning, Lee Hua-young found the mechanical voice irritating, sounding like that of a woman. He realized that brute force, which had served him well against monsters, wouldn't be effective here since he lacked a physical body and could only communicate through text and voice. Another voice from the system message informed the main character that the status window was now accessible. System message announced the unlocking of the status window. The voice from the system message informed him that people worldwide had been chosen as players, and he was currently in Korea. The voice requested him to bring up the status window. Raising an eyebrow, Lee Hua-young was about to express his indifference toward the status window when it suddenly appeared before him. It displayed his level as 1, with attributes including endurance, agility, strength, concentration, mana, bonus points, achievements, and skills all at their base levels. Nervously chuckling, Lee Hua-young found the situation increasingly intriguing. The previously perceived delusional notion of video games existing in the real world turned out to be true. The voice from the system message affirmed that this was proof of his player status and explained the presence of gates scattered worldwide, which were connected to dungeons. However, the main character interrupted, seeking confirmation that he needed to train to combat monsters and prevent the extinction of humanity. As soon as the system mentioned video games, the situation became somewhat clearer to him. Instead of listening to the voice elaborating further, he desired to ask a more crucial question. A voice from the system message informed him of his rapid learning progress. Lee Hua-young inquired why the boy, the employee, and the bespectacled guy had undergone such drastic changes. The voice responded that it had no answer and suggested that they were simply natural players. The main character intended to say something, but the system message turned red, emitting an incomprehensible sound and displaying an error message. Lee Hua-young looked at the red system message in surprise and asked what was happening. The red system message stated that he was the only non-regressed player tasked with maintaining balance in the game. This unique player would receive a special skill and was prompted to search for it. The main character was astonished and questioned why everyone else had regressed while he hadn't. He was familiar with the concept of regression, as he had shouted it countless times in the midst of brutal battles, expressing his desire to undo everything. On his knees in the midst of a bloody battlefield strewn with corpses, Lee Hwa-young shouted and raised his palms, feeling that everything was becoming clear. The message regarding the game being rebooted and how ordinary people effortlessly dealt with orcs came to his mind. He recalled Kim Bo-eun retrieving an axe from a slain orc, the boy striking the orc with a wrench, and the shop employee twirling a chain in the air. Lee Hwa-young realized that all the nonsensical aspects of the system were indeed true. This meant that the report stating he was the only player who hadn't regressed was likely accurate. Gritting his teeth, he cursed and questioned the purpose behind it all. It was at this moment that he noticed everyone else had regressed. Looking at the blue system message, Lee Hwa-young sighed and stated that he would ask another question. The system message instructed him to search for a unique skill. A woman slapped the main character on the back and asked what he was doing. She urged him to go and help the others in the fight, praising his skills. In response, he grimly told her that when faced with monsters, she was too afraid to make a sound, so it was better for her to remain silent. The woman became frightened, and he asked if she had regressed. In surprise, she inquired about the meaning of regression. Lee Hwa-young explained that it referred to going back to the past from the future. Perplexed, she asked him what he was talking about. With a calm expression, the protagonist raised his eyebrows, realizing yet another aspect. After observing the peculiar creatures that appeared suddenly in the system messages, he began to suspect that only those who became players had regressed, as if to prove their origin from the future. These players killed orcs by targeting their weak spots, and Lee Hwa-young was the only one unaware of the future. He furrowed his brow, deciding not to jump to conclusions. Kim Bo-eun approached him and asked if he could introduce himself again. He revealed that he was the reason Lee Hwa-young had become a player and that he had been searching for him throughout various dungeons in Korea. He claimed that meeting him was crucial and that this day had changed his life. Lee Hwa-young questioned the truthfulness of Kim Bo-eun's statement. In response, Kim Bo-eun stated that if he hadn't assisted him and provided him with a chainsaw, he would have never become a player and would have spent the rest of his life hiding in the basement like everyone else. The protagonist calmly pondered that these were certainly the words of someone who had visited the future. With a smile, Kim Bo-eun expressed that the sole reason for his success as a player was because Lee Hwa-young served as an example to him. The main character questioned if Kim Bo-eun knew him well. Kim Bo-eun replied that there wasn't a single player in Korea who wasn't familiar with him, as he was the player who had entered the last dungeon. This revelation surprised Lee Hwa-young, as he felt that just as he was starting to grasp the situation, he was confronted with yet another term he had never heard before in his life. He began to say something, and Kim Bo-eun eagerly assured him that he was listening, attracting a crowd of admiring individuals. The shop employee placed her hand on her chest and expressed her great honor at meeting the player who had entered the last dungeon, admitting that she hadn't recognized him back then. A boy holding a wrench remarked that he would remember, until the day he died, how Lee Hwa-young had boldly entered the final dungeon while defiantly gesturing at the reporters. The protagonist contemplated how all these people were engaged in battles against orcs, which essentially meant they were all regress players. Kim Bo-eun urged the main character to share what had transpired in the last dungeon. Lee Hwa-young noticed that they were constantly referring to a place called the last dungeon. A blue system message materialized in front of his face, notifying him that the search for a unique skill was completed and instructing him to check the status window. The next blue system message stated, "Butterfly Effect, Level 1. As the only non-regressed player, he would earn additional points for each action he took that shaped the future." Lee Hwa-young's eyes widened in surprise as he perfectly understood the concept of the butterfly effect, whereby the flutter of a butterfly's wing could cause a hurricane on the other side of the planet. Observing the system message, he contemplated the significance of the extra points. Suddenly, a loud sound reverberated, capturing everyone's attention. Multiple orcs emerged from a rift, prompting the regress players to rush into action. Maintaining a calm demeanor, the main character began firing from his machine gun, realizing that the orcs had just arrived. Aside from the status window, Lee Hwa-young, as a player, now saw the name and level of the monster above its head in the blue system message. The orc before him was labeled, Orc, Level 2. 2 shots struck the orc's head, causing it to stagger back, growling angrily with its eyes glowing red. The main character pondered the fact that bullets inflicted minimal damage on orcs, as firearms couldn't penetrate their thick skin. Weapons not specifically designed for combat only worked against orcs because they were utilized by regress players. Engaged in a fierce battle, regress players and orcs attacked each other. Lee Hwa-young contemplated how the regress players possessed a clear understanding of the orcs' weaknesses, aiming for the less fortified areas of their bodies. The shop employee hurled a chain, wrapping it around an orc's leg. Lee Hwa-young refrained from shooting at the orcs since the size of the cartridges was much smaller than the size of the hulking creatures. Kim Bo-eun struck the orc's leg with an axe, understanding that even if the bullet managed to hit the orc's ligaments, the damage would be insufficient to disarm it. Lee Hwa-young handed the machine gun to the soldier and picked up the chainsaw from the ground, marveling at the incredible power of regression. Peering ahead, he spotted an axe and swiftly raised it. Suddenly, a blue system message materialized, proclaiming the activation of his unique skill, Butterfly Effect, and informing him that he had altered the future, earning an additional point. Surprised, the main character inquired if he had truly changed the future. Setting the axe down on the ground, he exchanged it for a drill. Another blue system message appeared, stating the activation of the Butterfly Effect skill once again, emphasizing the chaining of the future and the acquisition of an extra point. Unexpectedly, the orc lunged at him from behind. Reacting swiftly, Lee Hwa-young hurled the axe at the orc, striking its knee and causing it to clatter to the floor. Seizing the opportunity, the main character advanced and swung the axe, beheading the orc. Yet another blue system message emerged, signifying the activation of the Butterfly Effect skill once more, with the chaining of the future and an additional point. While ascending, the main character turned to Kim Bo-eun and asked if he had used an axe previously. Kim Bo-eun, sporting a slight smile, replied that he had used a chainsaw. It dawned on Lee Hwa-young that he now understood. By doing something different from his past actions, he was effecting a change in the future. Though not entirely certain, it all seemed to fit. What he was presently doing must be the opposite of what he had done in his previous life. Kim Bo-eun disclosed that he had single-handedly slain 3 orcs in the past. Curious, the main character inquired how. Kim Bo-eun pointed to the side, where buckets of solvent resided on the shelves. Solvent was a substance that could liquefy solidified paint and was highly flammable. Grinning, Lee Hwa-young found it intriguing. Observing the buckets of solvent, he realized that he had the same idea as before, to set the orcs ablaze using the solvent. This meant that if Lee Hwa-young killed the orcs without employing the solvent, the future would be altered. For instance, he could choose to kill all of them or spare them all. He retrieved a bucket from the shelf, and once again, the blue system message appeared, confirming the activation of the Butterfly Effect skill, the change in the future, and the addition of an extra point. Exhausted players agreed to participate in the main character's plan. They incapacitated the orcs by targeting their Achilles tendons or knee joints, enabling Lee Hwa-young to pour solvent on them and set them alight. The blue system message continued to appear, signifying the Butterfly Effect skill's activation, the alteration of the future, and the accumulation of additional points. Finally, a level up occurred, granting 3 extra points. Surrounded by flames, Lee Hwa-young stood, convinced that if he did the opposite of his past actions, he would earn extra points. He realized that even without allocating points to his stats, he could effortlessly decapitate orcs. The blue system messages announced the receipt of the Brave Newbie achievement, given to players who completed the hunt without spending extra points. As a reward, he obtained the skill Armor, which strengthened his defense. The strength of the armor was directly proportional to the player's strength characteristic. Raising his eyebrows in surprise, Lee Hwa-young gazed at the system message as blue energy enveloped him, causing his hands to turn black. Confused, he peered down at his hands and asked what was happening. The individual gritted his teeth, softly cursed, and admitted that he had anticipated receiving this skill this time. The girl with the metal pipe frowned and inquired quietly when he had managed to acquire it, turning her attention towards them. The main character inquired about the issue and expressed concern over the fact that he had obtained this particular skill. Both the guy and the girl appeared frightened, with the girl frowning and stating that it was problematic because he intended to use it to crush all of Korea. The guy clenched his teeth and lamented that he couldn't believe he had missed out on acquiring it. Calmly raising his eyebrows, Lee Hua-young speculated that this skill must have been part of his past abilities, considering that the butterfly effect didn't activate when he obtained the brave newbie in armor skills. As the rift began to emit a purple glow, Kim Bo-in, who stood behind the main character, stared at him with a cold gaze. They were facing a challenge. The blue system message indicated the presence of an orc and goblin dungeon, with a maximum of 11 goblins and 8 orcs. The maximum number of players allowed was 4, and the dungeon difficulty was set to D. Lee Hua-young believed that the objective of the game was to destroy the human race. The dungeons contained a fixed number of monsters, which would emerge from their gates at specific intervals and wreak havoc. He recalled Kim Bo-in mentioning that each wave consisted of 10 goblins, with exactly 10 minutes between each wave. Lee Hua-young speculated that the gate connected these monster-filled dungeons to the surface, and the only way to stop them was to eliminate all the monsters as quickly as possible. He noted that the dungeon information provided details about the number of monsters and the maximum number of players allowed. The dungeon's difficulty level was also important, as it indicated the rarity of skills and items that could be obtained inside. Despite the difficulty of the dungeon, Lee Hua-young saw a reason to venture into it. He wanted to test his newly acquired stats and the capabilities of his armor skill. Since he lacked information about the world compared to the others, he believed that he needed a more tangible power, specifically physical strength. The blue system message explained that the armor skill, at its first level, enhanced the player's defense, with the strength of the armor being directly proportional to the player's strength characteristic. Lee Hua-young made the decision to invest all his points into strength, as indicated by the system message displaying Force 16. While he had experience defeating countless goblins and understanding their weaknesses, he was unaware of other potential dangers. Therefore, he intended to put his abilities to the test in a relatively safe environment. Lee Hua-young entered the portal, with Kim Bo-in thinking that he might have gained something in his previous life from this experience. The main character, along with the guy wielding a chainsaw and the girl with a metal pipe, emerged from the portal and began surveying their surroundings. A goblin appeared, grinning maliciously from around the corner. The group turned their attention to the goblin, and it charged at them. The goblin bit the main character's arm, leaving him surprised. However, Lee Hua-young remained composed and grabbed the goblin's head with his blackened hand, crushing it. The blue system message announced the activation of the armor skill, the alteration of the future, and the addition of an extra point. Lee Hua-young's status window displayed that he had reached the second level, with Endurance 1, Agility 1, Power 16, Concentration 1, and Mana 1. He had 1 bonus point and no achievements yet. His skills included the first level of the butterfly effect and armor. Lee Hua-young couldn't believe how quickly his strength had reached 16 within just 5 hours of starting the game. The main character casually opened his hand, causing the lifeless body of the goblin to fall to the ground. The girl expressed her disbelief, her voice filled with fear. The boy, surprised and frustrated, gritted his teeth and exclaimed that Lee Hua-young had crushed the goblin's skull with ease. Kim Bo-in approached Lee Hua-young and asked how he managed to possess the exclusive armor skill, which made him the strongest player in Korea in his previous life. Our main character responded in a conceited manner, saying, "So what?" Upon hearing this, Kim Bo-in declared his intention to acquire the skill. With a sudden motion, Kim Bo-in swiftly took the chainsaw from another individual and dashed toward Lee Hua-young, leaving him astonished. Using his armor skill, Lee Hua-young blocked the attack effortlessly with his hand, causing sparks to fly from the chainsaw blade. Chuckling in a sinister manner, he realized that even if he hadn't regressed, his newfound power shouldn't be possible. It was now his turn to take action. Raising his blackened hand, he grabbed the chainsaw blade and squeezed it, causing the chainsaw to bend. Lee Hua-young then threw the chainsaw to the floor, while the main character grabbed Kim Bo-in by the neck. A blue system message appeared above Kim Bo-in's head, indicating that he had reached level 3. Lee Hua-young continued to exert pressure on his throat, while the main character observed him with a cold gaze, reflecting on how greed leads to destruction. He thought about the scars he carried as reminders of the consequences of allowing his enemies to live during wartime. Lee Hua-young suspected that the others believed they could take advantage of the situation by accompanying him, hoping to acquire the skills he possessed from his previous life. Holding Kim Bo-in's neck above the ground, Lee Hua-young inquired if they also wanted to give it a try, and he bluntly told them to leave. Both the man and the girl became frightened. Continuing to punish Kim Bo-in, Lee Hua-young tightened his grip around his neck. Suddenly, a loud crack resonated, causing our protagonist to release his hold on Kim Bo-eun, who fell to the ground, emitting smoke from his body, indicating his demise. Our protagonist reflects that on the battlefield, instead of receiving gratitude for sparing his enemies, he was met with more bullets. That's how it always was, which is why he finished off Kim Bo-eun. Consequently, he is well aware that he should never let emotions interfere when dealing with an enemy who has threatened his life, even once. Lee Hwa-young declared that the law is now meaningless since the game has begun and asked the onlookers if they agreed. The main character warned the remaining boy and girl to leave if they valued their lives, casting them a threatening look. Lee Hwa-young acknowledged the brutal nature of the game, where the inventory window appears above a deceased player to facilitate item collection. A blue inventory system message appeared above Kim Bo-eun's body, displaying the Goblin Champion necklace, which granted a strength boost of 3 and an agility boost of 3. Lee Hwa-young clicked a button on the system message, claiming the necklace for himself. As he put it around his neck, the necklace turned red, and a system message appeared, indicating that he had altered the future and gained an extra point. Lee Hwa-young recognized the significance of the necklace, as 3 points in strength and agility were quite substantial, especially in the early stages of the game. He also noted that leveling up would gradually diminish its impact, but for now, it held considerable value. The guy crouched down beside Kim Bo-eun's lifeless body and questioned why he was wearing the necklace, finding it tasteless. The main character picked up a chainsaw from the ground and approached an orc. With a forceful thrust, he inserted the chainsaw into the orc's mouth, slicing its head in half. Lee Hwa-young remarked that, despite the 3-point increase in his strength to a total of 15, he didn't feel any noticeable difference. A blue system message appeared, stating that all the monsters in the dungeon had been defeated and that the dungeon would soon collapse, giving them 3 minutes to exit. The only way to destroy the gate was by eliminating all the monsters inside. When the monsters perished, the spatial rift would vanish without a trace. This situation perfectly illustrated Lee Hwa-young's point about the laws no longer making sense. Even regressed players were unaware of what happened to those left in the rift after the gate disappeared, as no one had returned to tell the tale. The main character headed towards the portal, noticing his torn jacket. He realized they were given time to leave. Glancing at Kim Bo-eun's motionless body on the floor, he noticed a boy standing before him. Lee Hwa-young recognized the boy as someone who had wanted to buy a wrench earlier. He asked the boy if he wished to share Kim Bo-eun's fate. The boy expressed his desire to stay with Lee Hwa-young, but the main character refused, urging him to depart. The boy pleaded to accompany him, but Lee Hwa-young grabbed him by the shoulders and sternly told him to stop. The status window displayed Lee Hwa-young's details: 2nd level, Endurance 1, Agility 4, Power 19, Concentration 1. He had 1 bonus point, no achievements, and possessed the Butterfly Effect skill at the 1st level and Armor skill at the 1st level. Clicking on a system message with the status window, a blue box indicated that his strength was now 25 plus 3. With the boost from the Goblin Champion necklace, his total strength reached 28, surpassing that of a level 9 player who had invested all their points in strength. Upon noticing the boy crying, Lee Hwa-young told him to stop. The boy sobbed and clutched his t-shirt, placing a hand over his chest. He expressed his belief that even after 10 years, his life would remain unchanged, and he desired to be a hero, just once. He implored Lee Hwa-young for assistance. Grinning, Lee Hwa-young found the boy, whose name was Kim Min-soo, amusing. He acknowledged that his interest in him stemmed from Kim Min-soo's knowledge of events 10 years in advance. Kim Min-soo clenched his fists and expressed his desire for his life to have significance, appealing to Lee Hwa-young for help. He vowed not to bring dishonor to his name. Lee Hwa-young acknowledged that when Kim Min-soo regressed, he hoped to improve his life. Unfortunately, it wasn't only Kim Min-soo who regressed, rendering any changes impossible. Lee Hwa-young viewed Kim Min-soo as an ordinary player who had spent 10 years killing monsters and clearing small dungeons. He believed that being the sidekick of Korea's main character would offer a better future. With a grin, Lee Hwa-young felt that Kim Min-soo's assessment wasn't far off, and his mind was working. They exited the portal together. The main character expressed his desire not to be just a henchman, and Kim Min-soo replied with a smile, saying that when he became the world's top man, he would be his right-hand man. He proclaimed that he would be number 1 and have authority over everything. Lee Hwa-young, the main character, told him that he needed to see if this Information would be useful and asked Kim Min-soo to name 10 people he would meet in the future, including their names, faces, and levels. He emphasized that it didn't matter to him whether they would become friends or enemies, he needed this information. Kim Min-soo understood and agreed. However, the main character warned him not to even think about deceiving him and reminded him that his age would not stop him from taking action. He instructed Kim Min-soo to contact him when he had gathered the information they discussed, and they exchanged phone numbers. Kim Min-soo happily ran out of the building, while Lee Hwa-young smiled and found him amusing. 3 days had passed since all the players regressed. Initially, they kept the regression a secret for various reasons. Firstly, they feared being considered crazy since the appearance of monsters alone wasn't enough to convince people of time travel. Additionally, the regressors wanted to live different lives from their previous ones and did not want to share information about the future. The city was plagued by raging monsters, and the regressors saw this regression as an opportunity to change their lives, similar to the main character in a novel. However, the fact that everyone had regressed made becoming the main character a distant dream. News and social networks were filled with information about the game, with headlines discussing regressors, people from the future, the stock market being on edge, and warnings about scammers pretending to be regressors. There were even predictions about the 2024 presidential election and the last dungeon in 20130. The sports betting industry temporarily shut down due to too many people knowing the game's results. The main character sat on the couch, watching TV. A man on the television introduced himself as Yun Mooney and spoke about an unprecedented catastrophe where the whole world turned into a game, causing all players to regress. He mentioned that they would discuss the situation with Lee Dong-gik, the director of the Asia-Pacific Players Association. Lee Dong-gik greeted him in return. The host mentioned that many players were in turmoil, particularly those who hadn't awakened as players, and asked Lee Dong-gik to explain the phenomenon. Lee Dong-gik responded that for ordinary people who hadn't become players, the situation had actually improved with the regression. He explained that because the players, who were protecting them from the monsters, had regressed, they would be able to gain strength much faster. He reassured the viewers that their lives would not change significantly with the protection of players, and he believed there was nothing to worry about, except for the potential issue of players demanding money for future information. The host summarized that the player's ability to become stronger was a positive development for humanity. He then asked about the reasons behind the regression and what happened in the last dungeon. Lee Hwa-young noticed the mention of the last dungeon, and Lee Dong-gik acknowledged that it was a justified question, as many people wondered if the regression was related to the events in the last dungeon. He explained that the regression occurred 3 hours after 21 chosen players from around the world entered the dungeon. The main character revealed that it turns out that after 10 years, the last dungeon appears, and 3 hours after 21 people enter it, all players regress. The host speculated that the last dungeon might be the end of the game and asked what had happened there. They mentioned that Lee Dong-gik, the director of the Asia-Pacific Players Association, would continue the discussion after the commercial break. Lee Hwa-young grinned and cursed, expressing curiosity about the strongest player he overheard in their conversation. He finally understood why players in the construction shop referred to him with the childish word, hero. As he looked out the window, a blue system message appeared, stating that he had earned 1 extra point for changing the future. Lee Hwa-young realized that almost everything he did in this world earned him additional points, and it seemed like he hadn't returned home in his previous life. He received points for simple actions like drinking water and sitting on the couch. Overwhelmed, he thought about how he could become the strongest player in Korea and enter the last dungeon without an unbalanced skill. He realized that his interest went beyond curiosity, it was driven by anticipation, reminiscent of his childhood when he learned that the weak always surrendered to the strong. He understood that he needed to become the strongest. Memories of being grabbed by 2 guys in an alley flashed through his mind. The main character had chosen money as the source of power and had sold his life in countless wars to increase his value. Even in a world where the concept of a better person didn't exist, he aspired to be one. And now, there was a title that embodied that aspiration. The TV reporter counted down happily from 5 to 1 and pointed at 3 statues, proclaiming them as statues of players, Lee Hwa-young, Park Musin, and Choi Chan. The reporter explained that they had entered the last dungeon as representatives of Korea, and the crowd cheered loudly. Lee Hwa-young was stunned to see his own statue on the TV screen. As he gripped the TV screen with his hands, he contemplated the significance of those statues and the actions they had undertaken just 3 days after all the players had regressed. It became apparent that in his previous life, he had truly been an incredible player among the mercenaries. It was the most expensive, but he realized that being a consumable held no value. However, now he observed that a cult-like following was forming around him. The reporter suggested that they should ask the 3 Korean players, Lee Hwa-young, Park Musin, and Choi Chan, about what had happened inside the last dungeon since they were present there. Lee Hwa-young expressed his own curiosity. The voice on the TV mentioned that all 3 players were currently in hiding. The reporter inquired about the disappearance of individuals who should be revered as heroes, emphasizing that they had vanished without a trace. The voice confirmed this and explained that these were the people who had entered the last dungeon, signifying the end of the game. These individuals, known as the strongest players in Korea, had returned from the dungeon with an abundance of unique items and skills. As a result, only they possessed knowledge of the whereabouts of these exceptional and legendary items and skills in the present time. The host questioned whether they were hiding for their own safety, to which the man replied affirmatively, stating that other players were also eager to acquire these rare items and skills due to their extraordinary strength. The host mentioned hearing about a new decree from the World Players Association, and the man confirmed this, explaining that players who had entered the last dungeon in their previous life would be pardoned for all their past crimes. The host expressed concern and questioned the necessity of this decree, to which the man responded that players from different countries still had to abide by the laws of their respective nations. The decree was established by the World Players Association, but an additional provision was added to the law, which he intended to discuss. Upon hearing this, the main character turned off the TV, stating that he understood. He gleaned 2 intriguing pieces of information. First, there were numerous individuals hunting him, and second, it was legally permissible for him to defeat them until they were incapacitated. He donned a sweatshirt and a black face mask, and a blue system message appeared, indicating that he had changed the future and earned an extra point. Wearing the mask and hood, Lee Hwa-young sprinted through the city streets, contemplating how he had no apparent reason to visit Gwang'an Square in his previous life. The mere act of going there would alter the future. As if confirming his thoughts, system notifications appeared with each step he took. 2 blue system messages appeared before him, one displaying a status window and the other indicating a special skill called Butterfly Effect, at the first level. The system messages announced that additional points had been applied to his dexterity attribute, bringing it to 55. Lee Hwa-young pushed off the ground, exhaled, and realized that the conventional rules regarding the allocation of extra points, such as favoring strength for early gameplay or spending mana quickly, held no significance for him. He was accumulating points at a completely different pace from other players. The main character swiftly traversed the streets, recognizing that the usual rules simply did not apply to him. He leapt from the roof of a building, landing gracefully on his feet. With his eyes glowing red, Lee Hwa-young stood in the square among a crowd of people, observing his statue labeled, Shadow of Death. Adjusting the brim of his cap, he expressed disbelief, realizing that if being chosen to enter the last dungeon held as much significance as mentioned on TV, he needed to prepare. He was reluctant to draw excessive attention to himself, and at present, acquiring information about his future was his utmost priority. During his time as a mercenary, he frequently appeared on TV to enhance his value. However, he considered it irrelevant now. He believed that other players who had regressed wouldn't hide their desires from him. They wanted information from him, presuming that he possessed it. However, that was not the case. They were unaware of his new power, which he did not possess in his previous life. Kim Boen was one of these players. Regardless, Lee Hwa-young had become the target of greed-driven players, which displeased him. The armed players in the square likely aimed to attract attention. They could display their weapons as heroes who will save the world from monsters, thereby gaining fame. Lee Hwa-young contemplated that if he revealed his face, this place would turn into a slaughterhouse. However, he needed other players. He had seen 3 statues being worshipped on TV, and he believed that to those people, he resembled a deity. They wouldn't treat him that way if they didn't know anything about him, regardless of the exaggerated stories. But unlike the broadcast, he didn't see them there. The statue of a man with a cloak draped over his shoulders read, "We are here to save humanity. Thank you for all your support, Choi Chul-sung, the king of poisons." On the statue of a man leaning his hands on his sword, it said, "We'll go in there and end this game once and for all, Park Musong, the Emperor of the Sword. Lee Hwa-young's statue had 2 horizontal lines and 1 vertical line, representing the middle finger, and the inscription reads, Shadow of Death. Folding his arms across his chest, Lee Hwa-young shook his head at the mention of the Shadow of Death. He witnessed the guy with the mace blast off his statue's head. A blue system message appeared, stating, You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. The guy wearing a white jacket grinned maliciously, landing in front of the protagonist as the statue's head fell to the ground. He stowed away the weapon in the system message. Lee Hwa-young calmly observed him, and the guy grinned back. They faced each other in a cloud of dust. Then, the guy turned around and started running away from him. Lee Hwa-young realized that controlling his speed wasn't as easy now that his agility was above 50 points. The blue system message appeared again, stating, You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. He chased after the guy as they ran through the streets. Lee Hwa-young grabbed the boy's neck, lifting him off the ground, and asked if he knew something, accompanied by a sinister smile. The main character stated that this indicated that the boy knew where to start running off to. The boy attempted to draw his weapon, but Lee Hwa-young seized his arm, warning him not to even consider it. He took the mace from the boy's hands, expressing gratitude and stating that he would need it. The blue system message appeared, stating, You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. Another blue system message provided information about the mace, stating its chance to stun the enemy by 25%, along with additional damage and strength bonuses. Lee Hwa-young questioned the bot about its affiliation, suspecting that it was working with the guild, given that it seemed impossible for an individual to acquire a rare weapon within just 5 days. Asserting his strength, he tightened his grip around the boy's neck. He asked if the boy had watched the interview, recalling that it featured the director of the World Players Association. Lee Hwa-young asked if he remembered what the director had said, mentioning that if he attempted any tricks, he wouldn't even leave a bloodstain behind. The man laughed nervously and pleaded to be let go. With a grim expression, Lee Hwa-young gave him a 10-second ultimatum and demanded to know who he was and where he came from, startling the boy. The boy, named Kim Chong-bae, stammered that he was from the General Guild. Lee Hwa-young instructed him to continue, and finally, Kim Chong-bae relented. The protagonist asked about Lee Hwa-young's project, believing it to be the General Guild's operation to acquire all the skills and items he had collected in his previous life. Lee Hwa-young asked what would come first and warned that if he didn't want to resort to eating worms, he better start talking. In a frightened voice, Kim Chong-bae apologized and revealed that the first step was stealth. He begged not to be killed and disclosed that in 3 days, at the gate to the werewolf dungeon, Lee Hwa-young would find more information. The man pleaded for mercy and explained that the werewolf dungeon, where Lee Hwa-young obtained the rare stealth skill, would be opened in 3 days. When asked how they knew all this, Kim Chong-bae couldn't provide a clear answer but insisted that the information was reliable, even shouting that he knew because it was his skill. Lee Hwa-young inquired about their plan to steal all his skills, and Kim Chong-bae explained that about 100 players would be on high alert 3 days before the dungeon opens, confident that Lee Hwa-young would come for his past skills. The protagonist realized that facing 100 regress players would be no easy task and frowned. The blue system message appeared again, stating, You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. Kim Min-soo soon arrived, stating that Kim Chong-bae was lying, and asked if he could kill him. Lee Hwa-young decided they would first listen to what he collected before making a decision. Kim Min-soo revealed that members of the General Guild were targeting the stealth skill. The protagonist turned to Kim Chong-bae and stated that one of them was lying. Once again, the blue system message appeared, stating, You changed the future, plus 1 extra point. Realizing that Kim Chong-bae and Kim Min-soo were discussing the same matter, the protagonist decided to listen to both and compare their information. Kim Chong-bae shouted that the werewolf dungeon would open tomorrow, and once again, the blue system message appeared. Lee Hwa-young smiled and questioning the meaning of it. Kim Chong-bae accused Kim Min-soo of lying and called him ill-intentioned. The protagonist approached them, grabbed them by the neck, lifting them off the ground, and demanded that they prove their cases one by one. Kim Min-soo took out his phone and showed it to Lee Hwa-young. The phone screen displayed a message asking if Lee Hwa-young would show up at the werewolf dungeon on January 7th, and the protagonist noted that the 7th of January was the following day. Kim Min-soo confirmed this information, satisfied with what he saw on his phone. He explained that the werewolf dungeon appeared in the early days of the game and was challenging for beginners due to the fast attack speed of the werewolves and their tendency to gather in packs. He showed Lee Hwa-young's phone screen, which indicated that no one had been able to defeat them at the start of the game, causing the dungeon to be forgotten and allowing the werewolves to roam freely. Kim Min-soo explained that the werewolf dungeon had gained fame among players because the monsters inside had wreaked havoc on nearby cities. Lee Hwa-young questioned why everyone knew the location of the dungeon, as dungeons and gates were usually secured by authorities or triggered evacuation messages for unawakened players. Kim Min-soo clarified that the werewolf dungeon was different. In the early days of the game, when it started, the dungeon attracted attention due to its unreal and chaotic nature. However, as time passed, it became routine, and ordinary people simply had to stay away when the gate opened. Yet, the werewolf dungeon posed a greater threat as the monsters would rampage out and mercilessly destroy nearby cities. Now, everyone hoped for a strong player to emerge who could handle the werewolves, so the location of the dungeon and its inhabitants were known to ordinary people. Kim Min-soo angrily shouted that Lee Hwa-young had destroyed this dungeon in his previous life. The protagonist turned to Kim Chong-bae to confirm this, and the blue system message indicated that they had changed the future with an extra point. Lee Hwa-young then asked Kim Chong-bae who had ordered him to destroy his statue. Kim Chong-bae cursed and attempted to access the blue system message, but Lee Hwa-young clenched his hand, causing it to crunch. The blue system message once again stated that they had changed the future with an extra point. Kim Chong-bae fell to the ground dead. Lee Hwa-young with surprise, noting that the system message meant Lee Hwa-young hadn't killed Kim Chong-bae in his previous life. Lee Hwa-young informed them that the werewolf dungeon would open on January 7th, which was the following day. He explained that when the dungeon initially opened, no player had the strength to destroy it. However, now that everyone had regressed, the situation was different. Lee Hwa-young speculated that there might be a substance capable of killing werewolves, similar to how rat poison kills rats. He expressed the need to gather more information about the dungeon. Kim Min-soo questioned why Lee Hwa-young needed information about places he had been to before, suggesting that Lee Hwa-young should already know the most about them. The protagonist raised an eyebrow and explained that hadn't regressed, causing Kim Min-soo to fall silent. After contemplating the situation, Kim Min-soo mentioned that the most crucial aspect was that the werewolf dungeon was a level 5 dungeon. He asked Lee Hwa-young about his level, stating that if it was below level 5, he wouldn't be able to enter. Lee Hwa-young expressed surprise and frustration at the requirement, believing that level didn't hold much significance for him. The status window then displayed Lee Hwa-young's level 2 status, including his attributes, skills, and achievements. Lee Hwa-young calculated that he had used a total of 80 points, including the ones in reserve, which amounted to a total of 242 points. Since each level awarded 3 points, dividing 242 by 3 resulted in approximately 80 levels. The main character felt that his stats were now on par with those of a level 80 player. Kim Min-soo shrugged and commented that even at his current level, it would be challenging for him to defeat werewolves. He also mentioned that other players wouldn't simply stand idly by. With a concerned expression, Lee Hwa-young pointed out that the problem lay in his level. Despite his impressive stats, he believed that he couldn't enter the dungeon because his actual level was lower than that of the werewolves. He asked Kim Min-soo to show him where he could level up. Kim Min-soo raised his hand and replied that currently, only the orc and goblin gates were open, and new gates would gradually open, similar to the werewolf gate opening tomorrow. He added that only 4 days had passed since the start of the game. The main character inquired about goblins and orcs. Kim Min-soo explained that monsters like goblins and orcs usually didn't interest him. Raising his eyebrows, Lee Hwa-young commented that he found them cute. The blue system message indicated that additional points had been applied to the strength attribute, resulting in a strength of 190. The main character clenched a black hand enveloped in a blue aura. The blue system message explained that the armor, at its first level, enhanced and strengthened the player's body, with the strength of the armor being proportional to the player's strength attribute. Wrapped in a blue aura, Lee Hwa-young asked Kim Min-soo if anyone in his previous life had managed to break through his armor. Kim Min-soo spread his hands and admitted that he didn't know because they didn't always go together. However, he confirmed that the title on his statue, Shadow of Death, was given because of the armor. Lee Hwa-young remarked that it was somewhat childish. Across from them, a few goblins were smiling maliciously. By increasing his strength stat, Lee Hua-young not only enhanced his physical strength but also the strength of his armor. He leapt forward, breaking the floor beneath him. Kim Min-soo covered his face with his hands. The blue system message displayed a dexterity of 55. The main character jumped onto the goblins, swinging his black hand and crushing one goblin's head to the ground. The blue system message indicated that they had changed the future, earning an extra point. Confident in his strength and agility, the main character calmly punched another goblin in the face. The blue system message once again stated that they had changed the future, receiving an additional point. Leaning his foot on a dead goblin, Lee Hua-young mentioned that he had recently come across something on the internet and asked about skill stones. He wondered if swallowing one would grant him a skill. Kim Min-soo pondered and admitted that he didn't know what even non-players were aware of. He questioned whether he truly hadn't regressed like the others and speculated that he was too strong to be a non-regressor. Angrily, Lee Hua-young demanded that he simply answer the question. Kim Min-soo became fearful and explained that a skill stone was, literally, a stone containing a skill. They were typically found near the monster's heart and about half the size of a human fist. The color of the stone's glow indicated the class of the skill inside, with white for normal, purple for rare, yellow for unique, and red for legendary. Kim Min-soo added that there was a rumor about a rare skill, stealth, being present in the werewolf dungeon, and its gem would glow purple. Lee Hua-young raised an eyebrow and inquired about the meaning of skill classes. Kim Min-soo explained that skill classes indicate the number of copies of each skill in existence. Lower class skills, such as rare and below, have more copies available. For example, there are multiple stealth stones in the world, so even if one is obtained in the werewolf dungeon, someone else in the world will also possess one. The blue system message confirmed the presence of a stealth skill gem. The main character asked if this meant that legendary and unique class stones were one of a kind. Kim Min-soo held up his index finger and smiled, confirming that it was indeed the case. He further explained that skills also have levels, with higher levels indicating greater strength and additional effects. Lee Hua-young then asked about unique skills, to which Kim Min-soo expressed surprise and asked for clarification. The main character glanced at the blue system message, which mentioned the butterfly effect skill at its first level, granting extra points for actions that change the future. Indifferently, Lee Hua-young stated that it didn't matter. They continued walking down the street, hiding around a corner. Above the main character's head, it was noted that Lee Hua-young was at level 5. Kim Min-soo inquired about their plan, pointing towards a square. Lee Hua-young responded that he would handle everything himself and instructed Kim Min-soo to go there and find out what was happening, urging him to report anything interesting. Kim Min-soo nodded eagerly, displaying loyalty. The main character observed that the gate of the werewolf dungeon would soon appear, and upon seeing around 100 players from the general guild waiting for Lee Hua-young, he confirmed that Kim Chong-bae hadn't lied about everything. The first step of Lee Hua-young's plan was to enter the gate as soon as it appeared. The dungeon allowed only a limited number of players to enter, with the exact number varying. According to Kim Min-soo, only 5 people could enter the werewolf dungeon. Lee Hua-young believed it was crucial to enter before the 5-player limit was reached. If that failed, he anticipated that those players would defeat the werewolves and acquire the stone. Checking his wristwatch, Lee Hua-young noted that there were 7 minutes remaining. A voice in the crowd mentioned that this was where Lee Hua-young obtained the rare stealth skill in his previous life. A blonde-haired individual raised his fist and declared that the gate would open in 5 minutes, stating that it would be the day when the general guild would take the lead. He emphasized that they would use Lee Hua-young's skill to leave an even greater mark on history than he did. The crowd cheered, and the man urged them to stay alert as they didn't know when Lee Hua-young would arrive. With a grin, the main character thought that he was already present, reading the information displayed on the system message in front of him stating that the gate would appear in 30 seconds, leading to the werewolf dungeon at level 5, with a maximum of 25 werewolves and 5 players allowed. As the countdown reached 1, a massive red gate materialized. The man encouraged everyone to move forward and make history, waving to his friend with the assurance that he would return soon. Another individual in a black shirt dismissed the werewolves as insignificant to them, referring to themselves as regressors. A yellow-haired person warned him not to die in the dungeon. They turned around and noticed Lee Hua-young running towards the gate, prompting them to arm themselves and attack him. Someone in the crowd shouted that Lee Hua-young was present and instructed him to contact headquarters. The main character couldn't believe that only 5 days had passed since all the players regressed, and it seemed illogical for someone with agility above 50 to appear. However, Lee Hwa-young paid no attention to logic and swiftly outran the armed men. One person in the crowd questioned how he could be so fast, while another claimed that such dexterity couldn't possibly exist. A voice urged everyone to chase after him instead of standing still. The main character entered the portal, with a guy in pursuit, but a red system message appeared, stating that the player limit had been reached and logging in was not possible. Kim Min-soo expressed surprise as Lee Hwa-young's swiftness left him excluded from their world. Expressed surprise as Lee Hwa-young and a few others stood in the night forest, staring at the main character in fear. Someone called out his name, and he realized that it was convenient that they all regressed because they already knew who he was, saving him the trouble of explaining. Lee Hwa-young calmly smiled and blue system messages appeared beside the guys. The person with blue hair instructed everyone to prepare and they reached into the blue system message. They charged at the main character, wielding green whips. The blue system message indicated that the whips were Goblin Chieftain's whips, causing low damage but granting control over goblins. Lee Hwa-young activated the armor skill, turning his arms and neck black, and the whips wrapped around his limbs. The blue system message mentioned that he was changing the future, earning an extra point. They pulled on the whips, pulling the protagonist's arms in different directions. The guy with blue hair looked at the blue system message and took out a net. Lee Hwa-young was surprised by their immediate realization that they were no match for him, so they decided to restrain him with the net since their punches would be ineffective. Grinning, he acknowledged that it was a good plan and thought they were playing their roles nicely. Lee Hwa-young knelt down next to the bound guys, still grinning, and commented that it was a good attempt but a pity that it didn't work out. As a snarling wolf approached, several evil black wolves surrounded him. Lee Hwa-young asked why they were so angry, and the wolf's eyes glowed red while drooling. The main character questioned if this behavior was normal for them and asked the guys if they wanted to be a snack for the wolves. They pleaded with him, expressing their unwillingness and willingness to comply. With a serious expression, Lee Hwa-young asked them who the wolves growled at angrily. The wolves launched an attack on Lee Hwa-young. One of the wolves twitched, and Lee Hwa-young quickly rose to his feet, raising a black fist. The wolves scattered, and the blue system message indicated that he was changing the future, earning an extra point. The main character exhaled, and 2 blue system messages appeared, stating, "You change the future, plus 1 extra point." The guys were surprised and asked how this was possible. Lee Hwa-young explained that they had to remember it right away, and it seemed to apply to them as well. He stood there with a bloody black hand, surrounded by wolves. One wounded wolf lay on the ground. Dogs and wolves have similar elongated muzzles, and if you grab a dog by the muzzle and close its jaw, it will perceive you as stronger. Lee Hwa-young had learned this a few years ago while tracking smugglers. After being bitten by a guard dog, he grabbed its muzzle with one hand and stared into its eyes, and the dog never dared to attack him again. However, he realized that these creatures were not just animals, they were monsters. The wolf leapt and snarled at him, but the main character tightly held the wolf's mouth with his hands, exerting more strength and causing chaos to its muzzle. He crushed the wolf's face, causing blood to spill. The boys looked at him in shock, amazed by his strength. Lee Hwa-young thought that unlike goblins and orcs, werewolves had strong bones. He delivered a punch to the wolf's face. The boys believed that since they had regressed, they knew the difference in physical strength between a level 2 orc and a level 5 werewolf, but Lee Hwa-young's strength surpassed all limits. Several wolves observed the main character, surrounded by their dead companions. The guy in the black shirt asked why he didn't kill everyone. The main character calmly replied that he didn't need the gate to disappear just yet. When all the monsters died, the dungeon would collapse, and the gate would vanish. Lee Hwa-young planned to leave the dungeon as soon as he found the werewolf with the skill stone, as the players from the general guild were waiting for him outside. He remembered the person who commanded the rest of the crowd. If the gate disappeared, they would know that he had killed all the werewolves and taken the skill stone, and they would undoubtedly cause chaos in Korea to find it. To avoid this trouble, Lee Hwa-young decided not to kill all the werewolves but to quietly slip through the gate. 2 wolves with bloodied mouths growled angrily, and 3 wolves rushed to attack the main character. He looked at them with a calm expression and stated that it wouldn't be enough. In an instant, he disappeared from their sight and reappeared behind them, striking the 3 wolves, causing them to whimper and fall to the ground. Lee Hua-young approached the terrified guys and addressed them. He explained that when the game began, rifts in space and time opened up all over the Earth, releasing monsters that caused irreparable damage to civilization. Everyone knew that this marked the end of humanity. To combat this destructive force, a game system was introduced, requiring players to eliminate all the monsters in the dungeons. Apart from a small group of fanatics, religious beliefs had nearly vanished. A man in a black hoodie shouted that they accepted the will of the Lord and acknowledged humanity's mistakes, urging them to stop the game. People in green robes, hands folded, repeated after him, proclaiming their belief that goblins were divine messengers. Lee Hua-young thought it was impossible for God or Buddha to send monsters that were previously only seen in games. While people were unsure of what to believe, a new faith emerged in the form of guilds. The crowd cheered for men with swords who emerged from a car, and someone shouted that the common guild was their only savior in this world. According to Lee Hua-young's thoughts, he believed that he was correct in using the term faith. The guilds not only had fans, but they also had followers who considered themselves parishioners. This allowed the guilds to expand without any obstacles. They fought among themselves to gain control over the dungeons, as the items dropped by monsters could be used as an energy source or crafted into weapons, aiding in the clearing of the dungeons. Moreover, skill stones obtained from the dungeons could be sold to players for a substantial amount of money. In other words, owning a dungeon brought significant profits. Additionally, closing these destructive gates garnered public approval due to the immense destruction they could cause. Lee Hua-young pondered that the guilds were a combination of business and religion. He inquired about who was in charge, and the frightened guy lying on the ground answered that it was Choi Chul-sung. The man stated that the person in charge was Choi Chul-sung. The main character repeated the name in surprise as he thought he knew it and had seen it on the statue next to his own. He asked if they were instructed to come for stealth. The dark-haired man responded in a startled voice that they were merely following instructions. The red-haired man frowned and questioned why he had divulged everything so easily, calling him a traitor. Lee Hua-young paused for a moment, then sat down beside the red-haired man and placed his hand on his shoulder. His hand turned black as he squeezed the shoulder tightly, causing it to crack and making the boy scream in pain. The system message displayed that the future had been altered and the protagonist received an extra point. With a sinister grin and red glowing eyes, Lee Hua-young asserted that he hadn't come there to joke around, rising to his feet. Thoughtfully, he repeated Choi Chul-sung's name, contemplating whether he was the head of the General Guild and one of the individuals who accompanied him to the last dungeon. The three statues in Gwangan Square were modeled after the three players chosen by the Korean representatives to enter the final dungeon. Lee Hua-young acknowledged that Choi Chul-sung was an associate who went to close the dungeon with the main character. The main character recalled the report about the erection of their statues and realized that he couldn't consider Choi Chul-sung a colleague since they had never met. He pondered the fact that the person he once fought alongside was now attempting to steal his skills. Lee Hua-young thoughtfully expressed understanding, recognizing it as human nature. He wasn't even offended by it and knew that the desire for personal gain is the driving force of progress. Calmly opening one eye, several black wolves appeared before the protagonist. He contemplated that after a few werewolves died, new ones would emerge, as the number of monsters in a dungeon remains constant. Since there were only 25 werewolves in this particular dungeon, new ones would appear at regular intervals to maintain the count. Lee Hua-young deduced that they had arrived on time, and he wouldn't need to dirty his hands. Holding a net in his hand, he expressed the hope that Choi Chul-sung would forgive him for killing his men. The dark-haired boy pleaded fearfully with him. The main character threw the net towards the running werewolves, while a blonde-haired guy in a red sweatshirt came out of the portal with a grin. He and the other two individuals who emerged with him expressed surprise upon seeing the bloody head of their comrade on the floor. Lee Hua-young realized that the limit of players in this dungeon was 5, and when those 4 died, the gate opened again to allow new players to enter. The main character, with bloodied hands and surrounded by dead werewolves, commented that he had completely forgotten. The system message beside him indicated that he had gained 93 extra points. 3 guys and a girl stood near the portal, looking at it in surprise. They charged swinging their green whips, but soon found themselves tied up and covered in a net, just like the previous group. Folding his arms across his chest, the main character asked which werewolf had the stone. The guy with the blonde hair replied that it was the one with white eyebrows. Calmly, Lee Hua-young said, great, noting that these players were different from the previous ones as they didn't hesitate to answer. Walking on the ground littered with the bodies of humans and werewolves, he assumed that the writhing werewolves with broken faces and limbs, as well as the bodies of their comrades, demonstrated how to deal with him. He thought about the werewolf with white eyebrows and sat down on the ground beside the trembling creature. Lee Hwa-young tightly seized the werewolf's head, feeling it crumble with a sickening crunch while blood splattered around. He observed as the main character ruthlessly tore apart the werewolf's body using only his bare hands. The members of the General Guild trembled in terror, witnessing this gruesome display. Lee Hwa-young inserted his hand into the werewolf's carcass with a look of disgust on his face. Reflecting on Kim Min-soo, he contemplated the idea of training him as a skilled butcher to avoid such gruesome tasks in the future. From the remains of the creature, he retrieved a purple stone that granted a level 1 stealth ability, with its duration linked to his mana. During the discussion regarding the potential value of the stone, Lee Hwa-young pondered the true worth of power versus monetary wealth. Memories of his difficult past as an orphan and a mercenary flashed through his mind, reinforcing his unwavering desire for strength above all else in this new world. Determined to reshape his fate, he announced his intention to rewrite history, earning an extra point as the system acknowledged his decision. However, his attempt to utilize the stealth skill was thwarted due to his insufficient level, leaving him frustrated. With 102 extra points available, Lee Hwa-young chose to enhance his strength, raising it to a total of 289 plus 3. Fully aware of the dangers that awaited him outside the dungeon, including 100 hostile players eager to acquire the stealth skill, he meticulously planned his next steps. Contemplating the continuous summoning of monsters by the dungeon, he made the decision to spare the last one to prevent its collapse, allowing him to focus on eliminating the remaining threats. Utilizing his immense strength, he swiftly dispatched 3 werewolves, resulting in a level up and 3 additional points. At level 10, Lee Hwa-young unlocked the stealth skill, altering the future and earning an extra point. The main character, surrounded by dead werewolves, activated the stealth skill and witnessed his hand becoming transparent. He raised an eyebrow and questioned how he could utilize such a weak skill. The blonde-haired guy explained that as the skill level increased, his clothing would also become transparent. The main character inquired about the skill's level, to which the guy clarified that higher skill levels corresponded to increased power, and higher skill classes indicated greater strength. He added that as the main character leveled up, the stealth skill, being a rare skill, would become incredibly potent. The main character contemplated the fact that skills had actual levels associated with their names, recalling the descriptions of his own skills. Placing his hands on his waist, he asked if his clothes would become transparent once the stealth skill reached the second level. The blonde-haired guy, a guy in a green shirt, and a smiling girl confirmed that it was true. Lee Hwa-young removed his clothes, activated the stealth skill, and vanished, startling the guild members who noticed his disappearance. He believed that these players had come seeking the stealth skill he had obtained in his previous life and that they would gladly take his life if given the chance. Seeing the werewolves surrounding the guild members, who were tied up under the net, he saw no reason to spare their lives. The blonde-haired boy pleaded for mercy, while the guy in the green jacket shouted that they had revealed all they knew. Lee Hwa-young silenced them and, with a loud bang, the gate to the dungeon opened. Onlookers in the crowd exclaimed that the gate had opened once again, and someone asked if another person had died. Another person questioned who would enter next. Invisible and unclothed, Lee Hwa-young walked out of the portal, passing through the crowd and noticing the spectacle. He spotted Kim Min-soo among the crowd, placing his hand on his shoulder and urging him to level up. Startled, Kim Min-soo looked at the main character and exclaimed that he had used stealth. Lee Hwa-young gestured for him to be quiet, then asked if he saw a nearby taxi, pointing his finger in its direction. He instructed Kim Min-soo to go to the taxi, and Kim Min-soo nodded with a furrowed brow. Looking at his phone, Lee Hwa-young rested his face on his hand and stared at the screen. Kim Min-soo approached and told him to look at the phone's screen, where a video from a news release was playing. The person in the video expressed curiosity about Lee Hwa-young's appearance in the werewolf dungeon and asked why it was happening. Another person responded that there were various reasons, but Lee Hwa-young's star quality undoubtedly played a role. Perplexed, the main character asked what they meant by star quality. The bald man proposed providing an example from Lee Hwa-young's past life. He mentioned that right before entering the last dungeon, Lee Hua-young boldly gestured with his middle finger towards numerous reporters, and people loved it. The man explained that they admired his fearlessness, considering him one of the strongest players who simply does as he pleases. Laughing, he suggested that this might be why people find him so intriguing. The girl asked if he meant to say that everyone is captivated by Lee Hua-young solely due to his star quality. The man responded that there could be multiple reasons, but he believes that to be true. Lee Hua-young smirked and commented that this guy knows how to speak properly. The girl mentioned that the chairman of the Players Skills and Technology Association wants to speak up, asking him to share his thoughts. A man with yellow eyes and white hair greeted them as Park Young-shik, the chairman of the Players Skills and Technology Association. He inquired if today's topic was about Lee Hua-young's future actions and if there was anything else he could contribute. The girl asked for everyone's agreement, and the others in the studio confirmed their assent. She requested Park Young-shik to continue. With his eyes closed, Park Young-shik stated that, in fact, as soon as Lee Hua-young arrived at the werewolf dungeon today, the game was already over. They expressed surprise and asked for an explanation. Someone advised him not to talk nonsense. The main character, taken aback, looked at the screen. The girl awkwardly smiled and requested clarification. The bald man frowned and asked him to avoid saying things that might confuse people. The man with dark hair questioned if he was saying that because no one needed it anymore. Kim Min-soo informed the main character that Park Young-shik was the influential chairman of the Players Skills and Technology Association, emphasizing that anything he said about players or monsters would be documented and reported. This is why everyone was surprised by his words. Kim Min-soo explained that, as all players regressed, the importance of the Players Skills and Technology Association diminished, and they no longer held a monopoly on information as they once did. Lee Hua-young pondered how Park Young-shik remained serious despite the anger around him. Park Young-shik continued, stating that in collaboration with the General Guild, they examined the bodies of the werewolves and discovered that they all had identical wounds in the skull area. Crushed due to compression. He mentioned that werewolf bones are incredibly strong, and according to statistics, only level 40 players who have exhausted all their strength points can crush their skulls. A man with dark hair jumped from his seat and argued that a player of Lee Hua-young's level could break werewolf bones with good equipment. Park Young-shik responded that the highest level dungeon currently available is the level 14 Blue Monkey Dungeon, and there are no stronger monsters at the moment. He explained that even if Lee Hua-young obtained something from them, the power of his items wouldn't be sufficient to shatter the werewolves' skulls in a single strike. He began pulling something out from under the table, mentioning that he also wanted to believe that Lee Hua-young possessed tools or equipment capable of granting him such an opportunity. He admitted that even after studying monsters for over a dozen years, he found it challenging to explain their injuries. He placed the werewolf's head on the table, prompting the man with dark hair to ask what he was doing. Startled, the girl screamed and covered her mouth with her hands. Park Young-shik expressed that the most intriguing aspect was that Lee Hua-young merely poked the werewolves with his finger. He mentioned that despite studying dungeons and their inhabitants for over 10 years, he had never witnessed anything like it before. He described it as a distinct finger mark, approximately the size of a medium-sized one. A man with dark hair exclaimed that it was absurd. The bald man pointed at him and angrily exclaimed that his statement was confusing the players' minds. He demanded that the man take responsibility for his outrageous claims and resign from his position. Observing the phone screen, Lee Hua-young thought to himself that all these individuals had their selfish motives. Those challenging Park Young-shik were people with power, occupying high positions in organizations related to players and possessing significant authority among players. These organizations included the Players Association, Guild Association, companies involved in harnessing energy from dungeon items, and companies producing player items and equipment. He believed that if it were true that he had killed the werewolves by flicking his finger on their foreheads, the morale, dreams, and hopes of the regressors would be completely shattered. He also believed that it was evident that the profits of companies associated with players and dungeons would plummet. Park Young-shik declared that the game was over. He stated that in this lifetime, Lee Hua-young would once again become one of the final dungeon entrants and complete the game. A man with dark hair stood up and reassured the audience not to lose hope because they still had a chance to enter the stories. The girl asked if there was a connection between Lee Hua-young showing the middle finger to the reporters before entering the last dungeon and killing the werewolves with the same finger. Leon raised an eyebrow and questioned what she was talking about and how she became a host with such intelligence. Lee Hwa-young thought that regardless of his actions, they were different from his previous life, and he always ended up gaining additional points. The only similarity between his past and present self was that both were considered strong, but apart from that, they were entirely different. The main character realized that the most crucial aspect at the moment was his level. He understood that regardless of how high his stats were, they were meaningless with a low level. Looking ahead with his eyes glowing red, Lee Hwa-young stated that he needed to level up as quickly as possible. He recognized that he had almost missed the opportunity to enter the werewolf dungeon and activate stealth because his level was too low. The fact that he was a level 80 player in terms of stats didn't matter at all. He acknowledged that if he gave up, the players would turn on him like wolves, seizing the opportunity to claim what was rightfully his. The main character regarded the level threshold of dungeons, understanding that if their level wasn't high enough, they wouldn't be able to enter and consequently couldn't acquire skills and equipment. He found the upcoming hunt to be dull and monotonous. Lee Hwa-young snapped his fingers and contemplated that the easiest way to level up now was by killing werewolves. Punching a werewolf, he thought about how he didn't go to the dungeon where he obtained stealth because no other dungeon in the world had this type of monster. He reflected on the initial satisfaction of crushing a werewolf's skull with his bare hands but admitted that he was already growing bored. The main character, Lee Hwa-young, and Kim Min-soo stood in the forest. Lee Hwa-young held a werewolf in his hand and expressed his boredom, stating that he would go kill someone else. Kim Min-soo disagreed, arguing that the current location was the best. He threw the werewolf to the ground. The protagonist inquired about the next dungeon, to which Kim Min-soo replied that the level 14 Blue Monkey dungeon was also open. However, Lee Hwa-young couldn't enter with his current level. Lee Hwa-young asked if there were any level 14 players currently in existence. He added that only 5 days had passed since the start of the game. Kim Min-soo expressed his belief that there were no such players. The main character thought that this was physically impossible, even if one hunted day and night without rest. He concluded that it meant no one could enter that dungeon. He informed Kim Min-soo that he could hunt blue monkeys without entering the dungeon. Perplexed, Kim Min-soo asked for clarification. The main character questioned if the blue monkeys would come out of the gate since there were no level 14 players. Kim Min-soo exclaimed in surprise, acknowledging that the Blue Ape dungeon, similar to the werewolf dungeon, had appeared too early. In the previous life, there were no level 14 players at this stage, and these monsters caused significant destruction. Lee Hwa-young placed his hands on his waist and remarked that it seemed that certain things couldn't be changed even after the regression. He believed that even if the players regressed and became stronger than in their previous lives, they couldn't alter the game's rules. Kim Min-soo warned that blue monkeys were formidable opponents. They were not only fast but also highly intelligent, capable of learning during combat. Observing the system message indicating he had 324 extra points, the main character acknowledged their abundance. He expressed that it didn't matter. Lee Hwa-young contemplated that his surplus of extra points equated to 108 levels. With no level 14 players currently, 108 seemed like an unimaginable number, a concept from an unimaginable world. Lee Hwa-young and Kim Min-soo entered the red portal. Lee Hwa-young believed that the strength of the monster didn't matter at all. He thought that even those who didn't awaken as players and hadn't regressed knew that the blue monkeys would appear there and cause colossal destruction. As a result, there wasn't a single soul present, not even other players. 6 days of regression weren't enough time in terms of comparison. Lee Hwa-young nonchalantly placed his hands in his trouser pockets, feeling a bit empty. Kim Min-soo smiled and pointed the way, informing him that he had seen blue monkeys before, even if only on TV, and they should not be underestimated. He mentioned that, perhaps because their level was higher than 10, they could use ranged attacks and learn from and imitate people. Upon hearing a car horn, Kim Min-soo remarked that it seemed like monsters were playing with cars. Lee Hwa-young questioned whether they were already outside the gate and asked about their characteristics, suggesting they were annoying with their speed. Kim Min-soo confirmed this, referring to a system message in front of the main character, which stated that he had 521 additional points. He advised applying the extra points to dexterity, and a blue aura enveloped him. The system message announced that additional points had been applied to the dexterity attribute. The subsequent system message displayed an agility of 578 plus 3. The main character swiftly dashed forward, shielding his hands from the powerful gust of wind. Kim Min-soo was taken aback by a sudden noise, prompting him to chase after the main character. Aware that he was only at level 3 and vulnerable to the monkey's attacks, Kim Min-soo urged caution. Meanwhile, Lee Hwa-young skillfully struck the blue monkeys on the ground, their level upgrades announced by a series of system messages. With a sinister grin, he grabbed a few blue monkeys by the tail and effortlessly hurled them into the air using his other hand. Kim Min-soo watched in astonishment as the main character effortlessly handled the blue monkeys. The monkeys attempted to retreat into the gate, but they were unable to do so. Lee Hwa-young realized that, just like players being unable to enter a dungeon when the limit is reached, the monsters couldn't return once they left. Standing before the dungeon portal, he observed the blue monkeys with a mix of amusement and a red system message displaying. Lee Hwa-young believed that regardless of whether it was a human or a monster, the look of someone desperately trying to survive was always the same. Perplexed, Kim Min-soo questioned the situation, expressing his confusion about the intelligent blue monkeys now running away. In an angry laugh, Lee Hwa-young approached the monkeys and demanded to know where they were going. The monkeys trembled in fear, their mouths agape. The main character understood that in order to enter the dungeons that would continue to appear as the game progressed, he needed to maintain a high level. Falling below the monsters, dungeon level would mean the end of his life as a player, with the gap between him and other players growing wider. He opened the status window, revealing that he was now level 17, with various attributes and skills listed. Lee Hwa-young smiled slightly as he observed the status window, enveloped in a blue aura. Kim Min-soo expressed his surprise at the main character's rapid progression, questioning how he had reached level 17 in just 6 days. Lee Hwa-young, breathing heavily, brushed off the inquiry, acknowledging his exhaustion and the inadequacy of his stamina. However, he found solace in the fact that each level increase restored his stamina, even though it required killing more monkeys after reaching level 15. Determined to enhance his stamina, Lee Hwa-young allocated extra points to that attribute, as indicated by a system message. Wrapped in a blue aura, he stood ready to sprint forward. Angry blue monkeys hurled garbage at him, but he shielded himself with his black hands and continued his advance. Seizing a startled monkey by the tail, he proceeded to pummel the others with a malicious smile, declaring that anyone who dared to escape would meet their demise. Kim Min-soo expressed astonishment at the carnage, surrounded by the lifeless bodies of numerous monkeys. The main character paused, realizing that they were in an underground parking lot with minimal blind spots for the surveillance cameras. Glancing at the security camera, he acknowledged that their presence in front of the large red portal had likely been recorded. Kim Min-soo suggested destroying the gate, to which the main character inquired about the reason. Kim Min-soo explained that leaving the gate intact would result in the continuous appearance of monsters, making it a convenient farming spot. Moreover, destroying the gate would prevent higher-level monsters from spawning. Lee Hwa-young recognized that the blue monkeys were level 14 monsters and, as he approached level 18, it wouldn't be profitable to continue killing them. He asked for clarification, and Kim Min-soo responded that high-level dungeons only emerged after low-level ones were destroyed. Kim Min-soo added that expecting millions of people to collectively stop clearing low-level dungeons was impossible. The main character agreed, acknowledging people's inherent selfishness. He smirked, contemplating the implications that clearing more dungeons would make it harder for other players. Kim Min-soo concurred, noting that if the main character closed the level 14 dungeon within 6 days of starting the game, level 15 dungeons would begin appearing in a couple of hours. Lee Hwa-young expressed surprise and asked how Kim Min-soo obtained such information. Kim Min-soo revealed a website called The Games on his phone screen, explaining that it was a gaming community where players shared information. Folding his arms, the main character questioned whether Kim Min-soo relied on that as a source. Kim Min-soo confirmed it and mentioned that players posted details about the dungeons they cleared, including the fastest completion times. He also informed the main character that the Blue Monkey dungeon wasn't the only level 14 dungeon worldwide, as the Green Orcs were also at that level. Clearing either of these dungeons would trigger the appearance of level 15 dungeons. The main character wondered if there was already a level 15 dungeon since he was the first to clear a level 14 one. Kim Min-soo responded affirmatively, stating that it was located in Gwangju Jongyu. Curious, Lee Hwa-young asked about the time it took to clear the first level 15 dungeon in the previous game. Kim Min-soo replied that it happened 41 days after the game's launch. Suddenly, he exclaimed, and the main character inquired about the cause of his excitement. Kim Min-soo suggested creating an account and uploading their completion time, as they were the first to clear a level 14 dungeon. The main character questioned the purpose of the website, and Kim Min-soo explained that it was recognized by the World Players Association and served as an official ranking table. The rankings were determined by the order in which players cleared dungeons, and the top-ranked players received special treatment and awards. Lee Hwa-young speculated that the selection of players for the final dungeon might be based on these rankings. Grinning thoughtfully, the main character suggested using the nickname, Fearless. Looking at his phone, Kim Min-soo informed him that he was already registering them, and the screen displayed, Republic of Korea, Level 14 Blue Monkey Dungeon successfully cleared on January 8, 1534, ID, Fearless. People in the comments expressed excitement that Level 15 monsters would soon appear. Kim Min-soo and Lee Hwa-young stared at the phone screen as comments continued to appear. After the game started, gate shelters shaped like stadiums with domes were built to protect buildings and the population from monsters. Ordinary people who hadn't become players sought refuge in these shelters when a gate appeared near their homes. A little girl asked her mother when they could go home, and her mother reassured her that the players would eliminate the monsters soon. The girl protested, having read on the internet that the gate was cleared 29 days after the game started and didn't want to wait another 18 days. On the high ground, a man announced that the Blue Ape Gate was gone and they could return home. Another person inquired about what he was carrying, as it hadn't even been a week, and it seemed implausible to get rid of the monsters so quickly. The man in the blue jacket sarcastically questioned if it was meant to be funny, leading people to throw garbage at him and tell him to leave. The screen behind him displayed a video of the main character battling blue monkeys, prompting surprise and questions from the crowd about the protagonist's identity. Someone mentioned that the monkeys were indeed dead, and a post appeared on the phone screen made by the main character and Kim Min-soo. Others noted that there was no account with the ID, Intrepid, in the previous game and speculated about the owner's identity. Nonetheless, someone expressed that it didn't matter and that the main character was their hero. Kim Min-soo and the main character walked along a tree-lined city street. Kim Min-soo mentioned that in his previous life, a level 15 dungeon was cleared 41 days after the game started, but it happened in Japan, not Korea. He disclosed that it was the Red-Eyed Horse dungeon and revealed that Korea also had a level 15 gate, but no one could clear it. The main character inquired about the type of monster they would encounter in their upcoming destination, and Kim Min-soo informed him that it was a giant bear. He assured the main character that they shouldn't have any problems with monsters below level 20 since they didn't use abilities. However, he cautioned that clearing the gate would take much longer once they started encountering higher level monsters. Kim Min-soo mentioned that according to information from the games, there was a 71-day gap between the level 19 and level 20 dungeons. Kim Min-soo asked if the main character thought that walking the entire 300 kilometers was excessive. Undeterred, the main character urged him to continue. Numerous system messages appeared behind the main character, indicating that he was altering the future and earning an extra point. Lee Hwa-young mentioned that every step they take is a separate decision, causing Kim Min-soo to clear his throat. Then, Kim Min-soo asked about the concept of changing the future. He asked the main character to imagine a scenario where he dropped his pen and someone else picked it up, and questioned if it would be considered a change in the future if he didn't drop it and no one picked it up. The main character awkwardly replied, suggesting that it might be a change. Kim Min-soo then wondered if that was why they were walking, stating that even the bugs they encountered and the plants they trampled on happened because they decided to go on foot. He exclaimed that walking itself changes the future. Suddenly, a red truck abruptly stopped behind them, and the driver angrily waved his fist, shouting at them that it was a road for cars. Kim Min-soo scratched his head awkwardly and apologized, asking the driver to continue driving. Lee Hwa-young walked up to the driver with a smile, and the driver asked if he was deaf and shouted that it was a highway as he drove away. The driver also asked what they would do if they got hit. Kim Min-soo sighed in relief, surprised to see that Lee Hwa-young had disappeared. The main character started running alongside the truck and asked the driver what the problem was and if he could overtake the car. The driver was surprised by the main character's response and the main character told him to calm down if he wanted to live. The driver obediently apologized. A system message appeared, indicating that the main character had changed the future and earned an extra point. The driver reflected that it had only been 9 days since the game started and even with all their agility points invested, a person wouldn't be able to run as fast as a car. He concluded that he was just imagining things. Lee Hwa-young thought it would be more useful for him to continue counting like this. He believed that because of him, the dungeons were opening at a different pace compared to his previous life, giving him the opportunity to increase the gap between himself and other players. He also thought that the memories of regressors become useless as soon as the future changes and that he could significantly influence this gap without regressing. He clenched his fist, thinking about level 20 monsters and the need to open the level 20 dungeon as soon as possible. He wanted to obtain a weapon that was only available to players of level 20 and above, which could drop from monsters of the appropriate level. In front of the main character, a huge bear appeared, growling loudly. Lee Hwa-young mentioned that monsters would start using skills from level 20. He punched the bear in the stomach, and the main character exhaled. There were 3 bears in front of them, and the main character remarked that they were strong. Lee Hwa-young dodged another bear's attack by jumping back. Lee Hwa-young then ran up the giant bear's arm and snapped its neck, causing it to fall to the ground. The main character grinned and mentioned that they were attacking one bear at a time, implying that it would take a long time to kill them all. The system message indicated that the main character's level had been upgraded and 3 additional points were awarded. It also stated that the future had been changed, earning an extra point. Under the main character's post on the game's platform, there were comments from other players. Some expressed frustration, saying that they couldn't defeat a level 16 monster in their area and wondered what they should do. Another commenter mentioned that the monsters that had destroyed their homes would soon reappear. Someone else questioned the legality of the situation, wondering why it was allowed. Kim Min-soo and Lee Hwa-young glanced at their phone screens, reading the comments praising a player named Fearless. One person speculated if it was Lee Hwa-young or Park Ham-sun, while another suggested it was likely Lee Hwa-young because they mentioned how he effortlessly killed a werewolf with a flick of his finger. Another comment consisted of random numbers and letters, and someone expressed their admiration for Kim Min-soo, saying, "Mr. Fearless, I love you." Kim Min-soo looked surprised as he read the comments on his phone. The main character asked what was wrong, and Kim Min-soo explained that someone had just cleared a level 16 dungeon. Lee Hwa-young inquired about the person who achieved it, and Kim Min-soo responded that it was Choi Chul-sung. The main character asked about Choi Chul-sung's level, and Kim Min-soo revealed that he was already level 16. The main character chuckled, recalling the statue, and commented that Choi Chul-sung seemed to have been waiting for the level 15 dungeon to be cleared before swiftly conquering the level 16 one. Lee Hwa-young grinned and remarked that someone interesting had finally appeared. Choi Chul-sung was known as the Poison King in his previous life and was the leader of Korea's largest guild, the General Guild. The main character mentioned that Choi Chul-sung was trying to steal his stealth and emphasized the need to be faster. The main character asked about the weapon Choi Chul-sung used in his previous life. Kim Min-soo replied that he didn't know its name but described it as a black dagger, jokingly referencing that if all the blood spilled by that dagger were poured on the ground, the planet would drown. The main character questioned why they were being so childish, and Kim Min-soo explained that it was a level 20 item, but there was only one level 20 monster in Korea, the Golden Leopard, which was a formidable creature. Lee Hwa-young smirked and sarcastically asked how many times he needed to say that it didn't matter to him. 2 posts appeared on the game's website, indicating the successful clearing of the level 17 Golem dungeon on January 9, 2111, and the level 18 Raging Ogre dungeon on January 10, 51. Lee Hwa-young inquired about the level 20 dungeon appearing right after the level 19 dungeon was cleared and its location. Kim Min-soo, looking at his phone, responded that according to the game, the level 19 dungeon was near Gangnam Station, and the level 20 dungeon was in Yong Park, in Bandon Gyeonggi Province. The main character mentioned that it would take around 30 minutes to get there without considering traffic jams. Kim Min-soo commented that they would be fortunate if the level 20 dungeon appeared in an empty park. Lee Hwa-young smirked and stated that even if people were present, they wouldn't be able to interfere, and they could watch him retrieve his weapons. The main character checked the status window, which displayed his level as 21, stamina as 23, agility is 573 plus 3, strength is 289 plus 3, concentration is 1, and mana as 1. The system message confirmed that additional points had been applied to the strength attribute, bringing it to 1033. With his fist clenched, the main character confidently stated that he could now fight with his bare hands. Kim Min-soo responded awkwardly. system message indicating that the player's strength stat had exceeded 1000 for the first time. This achievement was called King of Power, and as a reward, the player received the Petrification skill at the first level. This skill allowed the player to turn their opponent's body to stone for 3 seconds, with the duration of the effect being proportional to the player's strength stat. The main character pondered the system message thoughtfully and then directed a palm, surrounded by a blue aura, towards Kim Min-soo. The main character asked if he could move while under the effect of the Petrification skill. Kim Min-soo clarified that he couldn't move and confirmed that it was indeed the Petrification skill, which reached the power of 1000. The main character remarked that Kim Min-soo always seemed surprised whenever he accomplished something. Kim Min-soo explained that it was amazing because he had just received the skill that Emperor Yang Zhang possessed. Lee Hua-young inquired about the Emperor, prompting Kim Min-soo to show him something on his phone screen with a smile. The main character noticed a lengthy list of records from their past lives, with the ID, Chinese King Yang Sun. The main character questioned why a person with the ID, Chinese King, was nicknamed the Emperor. Kim Min-soo clarified that the Chinese King was a legendary player who united all the players in China. The game had a separate section displaying dungeon sweeps from their past lives, and the ID, Chinese King, appeared in most of them, indicating that he was the first player to clear those dungeons. The main character realized that in his previous life, the Chinese King had cleared more dungeons than him. Looking at the phone screen, the player ratings were displayed, with the Chinese King ranked first and Lee Hua-young ranked second. Lee Hua-young mentioned that the dungeons he cleared in the past would definitely have items and weapons that he previously used. Kim Min-soo enthusiastically admired the protagonist's strength and remarked that it surpassed even top-tier players. Lee Hua-young playfully suggested that the main character should go to the place where the level 20 dungeon would appear and inform him of everyone present. He promised to join as soon as he cleared the level 19 dungeon in Gangnam. As they turned their backs to each other, Kim Min-soo assured that he would contact Lee Hua-young immediately if he noticed anything strange. Above the head of the monster, which had one huge red eye, the words, "Old Mole level 19 inches" were written. Lee Hua-young realized that he needed to kill these monsters, the blue-eyed moles, in order for the level 20 Golden Leopard Gate to appear. If any other player on the planet cleared a level 19 dungeon, the level 20 gate would open. However, it seemed that there were no other players capable of clearing a level 19 dungeon yet, so it was up to Lee Hua-young to eliminate the blue-eyed moles. A police officer wearing a bulletproof vest approached the main character and requested to see his documents. Lee Hua-young observed that it seemed like they were trying to evacuate everyone from the area. Calmly, the main character replied that he didn't have his documents with him. Suddenly, a loud sound rang out, and the police officer turned around to face a gray, one-eyed mole that leapt out of the ground with a squeak. The police officers were ordered to open fire, and they began shooting their automatic weapons. The police officer warned the main character to leave the zone as it was dangerous and informed him that their guns were ineffective against the creatures. The officer asked if the main character was a player, to which he replied affirmatively. Behind the police officer, a blue-eyed mole leapt up, swinging its huge clawed paw. With his eyes glowing red, the main character stared at the mole before using the petrification skill. The mole froze in place, unable to move, and collapsed to the ground. The police officer recoiled in surprise, and the main character grabbed the mole by the neck with a dark hand, crushing it with a tight grip. As the mole was defeated, a system message appeared, indicating that the main character had altered the future and gained an additional point. The police officer allowed him to pass and wished him good luck. Lee Hua-young descended the underground steps towards the red portal, contemplating the cunning nature of the red-eyed moles compared to the other aggressive and simple-minded monsters. Near the portal, there were only 15 red-eyed moles present. Lee Hua-young questioned when they would be able to leave, noticing numerous holes in the ground in front of him. Digging them out individually would be time-consuming, so he decided to try a different approach. The main character accessed his inventory, and a blue system message appeared. A voice from the system warned him about the extremely harmful fumes that would be released if he burned the fur of blue monkeys. Lee Hua-young remembered Kim Min-soo mentioning using the smoke from burnt blue monkey fur to lure out monsters. He had saved up some fur for this purpose. Kneeling down, he realized that the 15 moles had caused a significant disturbance in his previous life. A mole suddenly sprung out of the ground, swinging its clawed paw. The main character blocked the attack with his dark hand, gripping the mole's neck tightly and crushing it. He then held out a tuft of fur to the next hole, repeating the process. With each successful encounter, a system message appeared, indicating that the future had been changed and granting an additional point. Surrounded by smoke-filled burrows, he counted to 15 as the system messages announced an increased level and awarded additional points. All the monsters in the dungeon had been defeated, and the remaining time for the gate's destruction was 3 minutes. Kim Min-soo contacted the main character through the phone, expressing concern about the presence of many reporters. Lee Hwa-young instructed him to get rid of them and assured that he would arrive soon. Kim Min-soo found it suspicious that no guild members were present and wondered why they were unaware of the main character's stealth ability. The main character suggested that they understand the consequences if they dared to come, implying that they would not return home. The police officers acknowledged Lee Hwa-young as the fearless one who had defeated all the moles in just half an hour. The main character stood next to a parked police car while having a conversation with Kim Min-soo. Kim Min-soo apologized for not being able to eliminate the reporters, and the main character stated that he would resolve everything once and for all. As Lee Hwa-young entered the crowd, people turned their heads to look at him. A reporter handed him a tape recorder and asked for his thoughts on players worldwide complaining about him. Another female reporter approached with a paper in her hand, inquiring if he was intentionally trying to undermine the morale of other players. The individual holding the camera stated that the world was currently experiencing catastrophic destruction, with high-level monsters appearing at a much faster rate than before. They asked the main character if he felt responsible for this situation. Enthusiastic fans requested autographs and the opportunity to take pictures with him. Surrounded by microphones, Lee Hwa-young stood with a raised eyebrow, finding the chaos noisy and bothersome. Having been a mercenary and living amidst explosions and gunfire, he had grown to appreciate silence. Memories of the battlefield explosion came to his mind. Lee Hwa-young saw this as an opportunity to ensure that reporters and other pests would keep their distance of at least 100 meters from him. He believed it was their own fault for being weak and emphasized the need for them to try harder. When asked if he truly thought so, the main character affirmed with a grim expression that weakness was not a sin, but those who complained about their fate deserved hell. A reporter with dark red hair asked for his thoughts on Bard, a representative of Canada who entered the last dungeon, claiming that Lee Hwa-young was an overrated player who would eventually become the weakest among high-level players in the later stages of the game. Curious about the channel with the highest viewership, a guy in a yellow shirt and a girl with pink hair eagerly raised their hands. Lee Hwa-young inquired about the name of the Canadian player, and the reporter with dark red hair responded that his name was Bobard. As camera flashes surrounded him, the main character raised his middle finger, explaining with a smile that it was directed at Bard. A blue system message appeared, indicating the Golden Leopard dungeon and its maximum of 7 players. The dungeon's difficulty was rated B+, and Lee Hwa-young realized that hunting 7 golden leopards on this difficulty wouldn't be easy. Standing before the 3 leopards enveloped in a blue aura, he understood that the dungeon's difficulty also determined the rarity of the items obtainable within it, and B+ represented the highest quality available. With a frown, Lee Hwa-young thrust his fist, which emitted a blue glow, towards the charging leopard, striking it in the chest. The leopard snarled in anger, causing the main character to twitch and temporarily lose the ability to use skills due to the golden leopard's roar. The 2 leopards growled menacingly, making him realize that he couldn't hunt them as easily as before. Spreading out his hands, Lee Hwa-young grinned and acknowledged that he probably couldn't use his skills in this situation. As a leopard charged, the protagonist swiftly dodged, morphing into a dark form. He wished for armor, knowing that even a slight graze from the leopard's fangs or claws would cause him to bleed. The leopards looked ahead in surprise as the main character struck one of them in the face with his fist. He pondered the idea of blocking their attacks with his forearm if he had armor and then killing them one by one. Unfortunately, he didn't possess any armor. Lee Hwa-young stood next to the dead leopard, with 2 pairs of red eyes staring back at him from the darkness. The crowd of leopards roared, and the main character beckoned them over with a sinister grin, surrounded by a blue aura. With a sinister smile, Lee Hwa-young seized the charging leopard by its neck, causing the dead leopard to collapse onto the ground. The 2 leopards behind him fixated their gaze on the main character. He contemplated making another move as he noticed a pair of red eyes lurking in the darkness behind him. Growling menacingly, the leopard charged once again. Grinning, the main character called for an end to the encounter. Behind Lee Hwa-young lay a pile of lifeless leopards as he advanced while gripping the tail of the leopard. A system message materialized before him, announcing the defeat of the level 20 golden leopards and the reception of a reward. Thoughtfully observing the system message, he wondered if he would need to reopen them to claim what he deserved. The main character's surprise grew as he discovered a new item in his inventory. He reached into the system message, revealing a description of a dagger enveloped in a red aura, an instrument of destruction capable of wreaking havoc on its wielder and everyone in its proximity. Realizing that he could harness the effects of his skills while wielding the dagger, Li Huayang playfully touched its blade with his finger and expressed satisfaction. The system message proclaimed the defeat of all monsters in the dungeon and the imminent destruction of the gate, with a remaining time of 3 minutes. Finding the dagger peculiar due to its lack of stats or additional damage, the main character pondered whether he had finally obtained the weapon he had wielded in his previous life. Grasping the dagger in his hand, he activated the armor skill, causing both the dagger and his hand to turn black. Upon utilizing stealth, the dagger and his body vanished from sight. Chuckling to himself, Li Huayang relished in the acquisition of his skills. He noted that unlike other weapons, the dagger lacked stats but could acquire skill effects. In other words, the stronger the main character became, the more potent the dagger would be. With his hands casually tucked into his pants pockets, Li Yung strolled toward the entrance of the dungeon and emerged from the portal into the city, where reporters swarmed around him. The reporters mentioned rumors linking him to the fearless ID in the game and inquired about its veracity. Li Huayang furrowed his brow. They further questioned whether the Golden Leopard dungeon had been cleared and if any weapons from his previous life were discovered within. He contemplated the reporters encircling him and glanced at Kim Min-soo in the crowd, who stood with folded hands as if pleading for their removal. Li Huayang mused that he had asked Kim Min-soo to handle them while he was in the dungeon, but evidently, it hadn't been successful. He deemed it forgivable since he lacked the power and authority to enforce such actions. After a pause, he wondered why players were not among the reporters, eagerly seeking his skills and items. The fact that the reporters were present while the players were not vexed him. The man with the microphone grinned and inquired about the timing of his acquisition of the unique God's Eye skill. A man in a blue jacket and blonde hair also grinned and handed him a microphone. The main character looked at him in surprise, his thoughts drifting to the Eye of God. Li Huayang inquired about the Eye of God, stealing a glance at Kim Min-soo, who nodded in response. People bombarded him with questions about his current skills, expressing curiosity on behalf of many. Another voice urged him to say something, and the main character found himself surrounded by a barrage of camera flashes. Another voice inquired about his level and stats. Li Huayang replied that he was currently at level 24, with a strength stat of 1033. Frowning, he observed the reporters exchanging surprised glances. Stepping forward, he caused the reporters in front of him to part, and he mentioned hearing that his actions were now legally permissible. As he departed, he hinted with a sinister grin that anyone who dared to harass him would meet their demise. The following day, chaos once again consumed the world. A newspaper headline, accompanied by a photo of Li Huayang flipping the middle finger, proclaimed, "Middle finger in response to Bard's provocations." Another headline declared, "Force 1033, the appearance of God." A third headline read, "Golden Leopard dungeon cleared in under 40 minutes, unparalleled achievement." Yet another headline featured a quote from North Korea's foreign minister, stating, "Li Huayang must be stopped. Few can handle monsters in North Korea." Lastly, an article warned, "If you interfere with me, I will kill you," featuring a photo of the main character gesturing the threat and a quote refusing interviews. Li Huayang revisited the topic of the Eye of God, prompting Kim Min-soo to explain that while he wasn't certain if it was its actual name, it was a skill Li Huayang possessed in his previous life. The main character pondered the significance of the skill and questioned what it enabled him to do. Kim Min-soo clarified that it allowed him to view player stats and inventories. Surprised, Li Huayang contemplated the fact that the God's Eye was a skill he had possessed in his previous life. Kim Min-soo raised his index finger, asserting that it was a unique skill that not only existed as a singular instance but also grew significantly stronger when enhanced. He emphasized that the power of unique skills stemmed not only from their rarity but also from their exponential increase in strength upon leveling up. Huayang considered the notion that by increasing his stealth level, he could render touched objects invisible. Similarly, unique skills not only augmented their stats but also acquired new effects. Elevating the level of a unique skill was often referred to as the second awakening. Kim Min-soo crossed his arms and closed his eyes, asserting that as the sole possessor of the skill, only Lee Hwa-young truly knew its true potential. Rumors circulated that at the second level of the skill, he could detect subtle changes in opponents' pupils or discern the rhythm of their hearts from a distance. He added that, considering his tendency to strike only at weak spots, the eye could be even more terrifying. Lee Hwa-young asked about their current location, to which Kim Min-soo replied that he didn't know but pulled something out of his pocket, suggesting it might be of assistance. He showed Lee Hwa-young his phone screen, displaying the words, "Clear Dungeons." He explained that there was a high chance, but not a guarantee, of finding information. The screen indicated the title, Golden Leopard Dungeon, level 20, and the location is South Korea. Observing the phone screen, the main character remarked on the abundance of dungeons. He recognized that the sheer number posed a challenge and acknowledged that he wouldn't be able to clear them all. Lee Hwa-young contemplated the regression of all players and speculated that there would undoubtedly be individuals who desired the Eye of God. He believed it wouldn't be limited to just a few people, but rather encompass large guilds and low-level players alike. Kim Min-soo intervened and urged him to understand that he was one of the strongest players in the past, which had sparked numerous discussions. Confused, the main character questioned why Kim Min-soo raised his index finger and mentioned the circulating rumors. Kim Min-soo explained that he was referring to the discussions about Lee Hwa-young's abilities. This caused the main character to furrow his brow and inquire about what was being said about him. Kim Min-soo revealed that major guilds in South Korea possessed extensive information about every player who entered the last dungeon. He questioned whether Lee Hwa-young believed they were aware of the regression event in advance. The main character found the notion absurd that they would have foreknowledge of the regression. However, he considered the possibility that collecting information about the strongest players before anyone else could obtain their skills and items would be a smart move. Kim Min-soo clarified that he had limited knowledge of the regression. Curious, Lee Hwa-young sought clarification on the guild's intention to kill players. Kim Min-soo explained that the large guilds had detailed information on renowned players, including when and where they acquired their items and skills. The main character questioned the connection between murder and this information. Kim Min-soo responded that there was indeed a connection, highlighting the failed attempts at stealing Lee Hwa-young's stealth in the past. He added that they would devise new strategies to minimize the effectiveness of his stealth, as numerous individuals were keeping a close eye on him. Considering the sheets of information about his past life as treasure maps, the main character realized they would guide others to the items and skills he possessed. Kim Min-soo, wearing a somber expression, disclosed that he, like other players, had been a member of a guild in his previous life, and their guild had engaged in similar practices. He explained that in this world, stealing skills and items from others had become commonplace as they held significant value. The main character admitted his continued confusion and inquired about how they knew where other players obtained their skills and items if they recorded such information. Kim Min-soo responded that they would note the gate the players had cleared. If someone had a skill in Gate 2 but not in Gate 1, it could be deduced that they obtained it in Gate 1. Lee Hwa-young speculated that players were willing to kill others for the sake of obtaining valuable items and skills, and to make things easier for themselves, they meticulously monitored the actions of such players. He then asked about the Poison King Guild, a prominent guild in Korea that had always been at the top. Choi Chul-sung, the guild's leader, was one of the individuals who entered the last dungeon. Lee Hwa-young deduced that due to the guild's size, they possessed an immense capacity for gathering information. Furthermore, since they had attempted to steal his stealth, it was highly likely that they knew the whereabouts of other skills and items as well. With a nostalgic smile, he mentioned that he and Choi Chul-sung had an unspoken arrangement of sorts. He believed he knew the reason why no one was present at the Golden Leopard Gate. The main character explained that they were likely preparing for a more significant skill, namely the Eye of God. He stated that regressors had little use for items unless they were of legendary quality. Kim Min-soo added that regressors could safely craft items using materials from dungeons because they possessed knowledge of recipes. He further noted that numerous companies were involved in manufacturing during their past lives. The main character suggested that there might be two reasons for the absence of not only the general guild but also other players at that particular gate. Curious, Kim Min-soo inquired about those reasons. The main character speculated whether it would be easier for others to kill him once he had already collected most of the items. He imagined a crowd of armored men wielding swords, daggers, and staffs. Lee Hwa-young remarked that killing him at that point would save them a considerable amount of time, but it would only be possible if they succeeded. Kim Min-soo declared such an outcome to be impossible. The main character agreed with a smile, stating that the only reason they didn't take the dagger was that they feared it, and now they wanted nothing to do with it. A post appeared on the game's website, the Republic of Korea, announcing the successful clearance of the level 21 Black Orc dungeon by Poison Choi on January 11, 1231. Looking at the system message, the main character grinned and commented that he was making progress. He believed that players from other countries like the United States and China were initially on the list, but starting from the 20th level, only he and Choi Chul-sung remained. Lee Hwa-young mentioned that the difference in their levels was minor, with his status window indicating level 25. He had 223 stamina, 573 plus 3 agility, 1033 plus 3 strength, 1 concentration, 1 mana, and 732 extra points. His achievements included Brave Novice, King of Power Skills, Butterfly Effect, and First Level Armor. He decided to allocate all his points into concentration, and the system message confirmed the successful application of additional points to the concentration attribute, bringing it to 733. Grinning, the main character remarked that no one could be the king just yet. He believed that the Emperor Achievement M was obtained when reaching 1000 points in a specific stat, and upon surpassing 1000 strength, he acquired the King of Strength achievement, along with the petrification skill previously possessed by Emperor Yeong-song-wai. Enveloped in a red aura, Lee Hwa-young pondered that a level 334 player would have a total of 1000 stat points. Considering that a level 21 dungeon had just been cleared, it was highly unlikely that a player of that level existed. With a smile, Kim Min-soo commended the main character's choice and emphasized the importance of concentration. The main character acknowledged the significance of concentration in hand-to-hand combat, realizing that a high concentration would enhance the effectiveness of his other attributes, allowing for better dodging and identifying opponents' weaknesses. Additionally, concentration proved valuable when unable to use skills. The main character stood with hands clasped and eyes closed, surrounded by a blue aura. With his hands comfortably tucked into the pockets of his shorts, Kim Min-soo inquired whether mana was necessary. After a brief pause, the main character responded that he hadn't depleted it yet. Kim Min-soo commended him for his wise use of skills, acknowledging that it was true. The main character believed that the mana attribute determined one's ability to absorb and utilize mana from the surrounding streams, and if managed correctly, it would be sufficient. He explained that he only used skills when absolutely necessary, thus conserving his mana. Rubbing his neck, he expressed the need to increase his stealth level. Kim Min-soo questioned why they shouldn't rush in and swiftly clean up. In response, the main character stated that they didn't need to create a commotion if there was a way to avoid it. He believed that torturing hostages was far less effective in gathering information compared to espionage and infiltration. With a sinister grin, Lee Hwa-young remarked that once his stealth reached the second level, they would be at the General Guild headquarters. Kim Min-soo suggested to the main character that he should consider dressing more appropriately now that he was stronger. Perplexed, the main character raised his jacket and inquired about the meaning behind Kim Min-soo's statement. Kim Min-soo explained that he needed something cool to showcase his strength. Lee Hwa-young responded with a smile, stating that he didn't require cool clothes because he was inherently cool himself. Kim Min-soo acknowledged this and believed that the clothes would make it more evident. Frustrated, the protagonist exhaled and requested Kim Min-soo to guide him. Surprisingly, Kim Min-soo agreed and, standing in front of the building's doors, mentioned rumors that the shop housed the best clothes for players venturing into dungeons. Upon entering, he gleefully shared that the store not only sold ordinary clothes but also unique items that would help them stand out from the crowd. In the room, 2 cross swords adorned the wall, and shelves displayed potions of various colors, their brilliance catching the light. Armor sets glistened on the shelves. While Kim Min-soo enthusiastically spoke, the main character surveyed the store. A store employee asked if they needed any assistance. Lee Hwa-young turned around, and Kim Min-soo eagerly approached the employee, explaining that they were seeking clothes that exuded exceptional coolness. The employee nervously twitched but agreed to assist them and gestured for them to follow. Triumphantly clutching a box of clothes, Kim Min-soo exclaimed in delight. The main character observed his happiness and offered to pay. Kim Min-soo happily agreed. The salesman apologized for his bluntness, bowed, and asked if he could offer the clothes for free as a gesture of gratitude for their visit. Grinning, the main character accepted. Kim Min-soo questioned if it was genuine as they exited the store, and Lee Hwa-young teasingly commented that Kim Min-soo couldn't have imagined that his reputation alone could earn him free clothing. Dressed in dark attire, including a raincoat, the main character strolled down the street alongside Kim Min-soo. He inquired about ways to improve his stealth level. Kim Min-soo responded by stating that the key to leveling up any skill is the level of proficiency. Perplexed, the main character inquired about its meaning, to which Kim Min-soo explained that it referred to understanding and skillfully applying the skill. Lee Hwa-young questioned whether this meant that simply using the skill repeatedly would lead to improvement on its own. Kim Min-soo clarified that skills also have a point system. The main character pondered the concept of proficiency points while considering the increase in skill level. A notification from the system appeared, displaying a blue message stating that the proficiency level of the strength skill had been elevated. Kim Min-soo interjected, explaining that when proficiency increases from a specific action, that action itself is referred to as a proficiency point. Contemplatively, Lee Hwa-young remarked that those who have regressed in skill level have prior knowledge of actions that enhance skill proficiency. He inquired about what he should do. Amidst the bright night streets of the city, adorned with shining stars, the main character and Kim Min-soo continued their journey. A blue system message hovered above the dungeon portal, indicating the presence of goblins and orcs in the dungeon. The message specified that there were 11 goblins and 8 orcs, with a maximum of 4 players allowed and a difficulty rating of D. Numerous gates scattered throughout the world featured the same monsters. Even if one goblin and orc dungeon were cleared, the remaining ones would persist. Walking on the stone floor after descending the stairs near the red portal, the main character regarded the goblin and orc dungeon as his experimentation ground. Goblins were considered the weakest enemies in the game, and thus many of these gates were left uncleared to assist beginners. Lee Hwa-young acknowledged that these monsters posed no threat to him and deemed it a suitable choice. As they progressed, something caught their attention, an enraged, massive orc. Contemplating what action would satisfy the game's creator, the main character activated the stealth skill, rendering himself invisible. Confused, the orc scanned its surroundings. The main character then utilized the armor skill, observing that his skin turned black and he became visible once again. Realizing that he couldn't use both skills simultaneously, he considered that it might be too powerful. Lee Hwa-young used stealth once more and brandished a dagger. Positioned behind the orc, enveloped in a blue aura, he leapt at it, swinging the dagger and plunging it into the orc's neck. A system message appeared, notifying the main character that the proficiency level in the first level of the stealth skill had increased. The message also indicated that he had altered the future and obtained an additional point. Suspended in midair above the falling orc, the main character disengaged from the combat. Lee Hwa-young questioned if it was genuinely that simple. Noticing Kim Min-soo standing next to the shivering orc on the ground, he speculated that this simplicity might only apply to the first level. The main character retrieved his dagger from the orc's neck, resulting in another system message confirming an increase in proficiency in the first level of the stealth skill. The message reiterated that he had altered the future and acquired an extra point. The proficiency level in the first level of the stealth skill had now increased. The main character declared that he had reached the second level of stealth, which made all objects touching his body invisible. The duration of the effect was proportional to his monostat, enveloped in a red aura. Satisfied, he asked Kim Min-soo about the location of the General Guild headquarters. Kim Min-soo responded that they were in Gangnam District, grinning. The main character remarked that they were in a wealthy area as the afternoon sun bathed the high-rise buildings. Invisibility shrouded Lee Hwa-young as he followed the two individuals, with a line of expensive sports cars lining the street nearby. Taking in the surroundings, he surmised that this must be the entrance. The blue-haired individual informed the blonde-haired person that due to Lee Hwa-young's actions, they were left with nothing all the time. In response, the blonde-haired person stated that Lee Hwa-young was actually saving the world and advised the blue-haired individual to pretend to participate in the guild's activities while still receiving payment. Laughing, he added that if anyone had overheard their conversation, they would have been immediately expelled. As they approached the guard, the blonde-haired person swiped a card across the keyboard panel, causing the door to open. And they entered with two other individuals, including the unseen protagonist. The blue-haired person's eyes widened in surprise, prompting the guard to inquire about what had happened. The blonde-haired person reassured the guard that everything was fine and that he had merely thought he saw something. Lee Hua-young felt relieved and decided it was time to go. Observing a sign on the wall indicating the ground floor is the lobby, the second floor is a strategic block, and the third floor is a conference hall, he realized where he needed to go. A voice emanating from the speakers announced that the morning meeting would commence at 9:30 and requested all officials in the building to gather in the conference room. Hearing the sound, Lee Hua-young turned around thoughtfully near the elevator, recognizing that he now knew his destination. A man at the podium declared that the meeting was officially open on January 14th. Folding his arms, the main character realized that there were many people present and understood that this would not be the last time he would encounter them. He resolved to memorize as much as he could. A brown-haired individual wearing armor informed a red-haired person that there would be no chapter that day because he was in a level 23 dungeon. Concerned, the red-haired person asked if he was working too hard. A sign in front of them indicated their rank as A, and a light brown-haired person asked if he was alright, adding that he would undoubtedly be tired. Another individual remarked that no one could accompany him, so he had to go alone. A person with medium-length dark hair mentioned that the day when their leader would obtain the Eye of God was approaching. Upon hearing the mention of the Eye of God, Lee Hua-young tensed up. The blonde-haired person coughed and inquired about the progress of their training. The blue-eyed individual crossed his arms and replied that they had nothing to prepare. The green-hooded person agreed, emphasizing the need to keep an eye on the young one. The blue-eyed individual responded, expressing frustration that the young one's name always came up in every meeting. The gray-haired person remarked that it was because they couldn't even catch him and asked if anyone knew his whereabouts. The vice-head of the General Guild, named Young Hansing, questioned how they could apprehend him if they couldn't even determine that much. Lee Hua-young smiled, realizing that he was present. Hansing placed his glass on the table and stated that they had already granted him the stealth ability, sacrificing the dagger. He asked if they knew what would happen if they also gave him the Eye of God. The person on the stage explained that they were currently unable to ascertain Lee Hua-young's location but expressed confidence that he would appear at the designated spot to obtain the Eye of God. He urged everyone to remain composed. Young Hansing clenched his teeth and cursed, declaring that he was much stronger than in his previous life. He slammed the papers on the table and demanded to know what Lee Hua-young was up to and how he had become so powerful, questioning how they could catch him without knowing all of this. On the paper was a picture of the main character giving the middle finger, accompanied by the title, Strength 1033. Young Hansing urged them to look at it and asked if they believed that a strength of 1033 units was real. Closing his eyes and massaging the back of his head, he expressed doubt that there was any confirmation of the truth behind Lee Hua-young's actions. He believed that Lee Hua-young intentionally wanted to scare off the players who were hunting him, but he insisted that Lee Hua-young wasn't that kind of person. Instead, he preferred that they directly confront him. He requested a more detailed explanation of their plan. The man on the stage reacted by forcefully placing his papers on the podium, explaining that it contained a record of everything Lee Hua-young had done in his previous life. He revealed that Lee Hua-young obtained the Eye of God on April 17 in the level 34 Black Ogre dungeon, resulting in the deaths of 4 of their players. One individual raised his hand, identifying himself as Han Wang, who was killed by Lee Hua-young in the Black Ogre dungeon. 3 others also raised their hands, a girl named Li Jin with dark hair, a guy named Park Kwang Hho with slicked back blonde hair, and a guy with white hair named Goong Hyan. Li Yujin, the girl with dark hair, mentioned that there must be a rare skill in the A-rank Black Ogre dungeon, prompting the headmaster to send a group there. She revealed that Lee Hua-young was already present in the dungeon but wasn't a famous player at that time, so they ignored him. Li Yujin recalled their encounter with the main character, noting that they told him to leave. Park Kwang-ho expressed dislike towards the main character, who responded with indifference. Go Sang-hai stated that he was angry about the situation, while Park Kwang-ho trembled with fear. Li Yujin mentioned that they were familiar with the monsters in the dungeon and were certain that the Eye of God would appear there. She credited their group for providing this information to the General Guild and added some additional details they discovered after the regression. Lee Hua-young glanced at the papers in the hands of the man behind the podium, realizing that everything was written there, including the gate's location and the monsters' weaknesses. A system message confirmed that he had changed the future and gained an extra point. The main character grinned happily. Choi Chul-sung rested his chin on his hands and smirked as he asked what they wanted. Li Jin frowned and explained that they heard the headmaster plan to go to the dungeon alone, but only their group and Lee Hua-young knew about it. She asked for a chance to take Lee Hwa-young's life in return with the Eye of God. Choi Chol-sung expressed amusement at her attitude and inquired about their plan. Lee Jin revealed that they intended to introduce the SA2 ogre. Another person exclaimed that the SA2 ogre was banned by the World Association and questioned if they wanted to destroy their guild. Lee Yujin clarified that they needed to use the SA2 ogre to stop Lee Hwa-young, and they would manipulate the black ogres to kill him. Park Kwang-ho stated that they would assist in the plan and retrieve the Eye of God. Lee Hwa-young sent a message on his phone, wondering if they wanted to die once again. Kim Min-soo, looking at the surprising message on his phone, caught the main character's attention, who asked him to gather information about the SA2 ogre.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more content. Feel free to leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts or suggestions. If you want to stay updated on all our latest uploads, click the notification bell icon. And hey, why not check out some of our other videos popping up on the screen right now? If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really means a lot. Peace.